Did you say what kind of animal it was that attacked her?
So yeah, they're saying it's some type of animal attack. Statistically, there's been more animal attacks, mysterious deaths, people gone missing.
In other news, local authorities remain perplexed by the animal attacks.
What attacked you in the woods?
An animal. What else could it have been?
Welcome back to It Was an Animal Attack, your home of the supernatural drama series. I'm Fadzai.
And I'm Sandile.
And it's been a while since you've heard from us.
It sure has.
Unless you're binging this and you've just discovered us.
In which case, not welcome back. Hey, you're still with us.
But I hope y'all enjoyed the first year of us doing this. And I hope you had an awesome festive season.
Yeah, a good December holiday, despite, the general malaise. We hope at least you found some good times with your family over this holiday period.
Did you say Malays?
I did. Is that not the correct word?
I thought Malay was like an ethnic group.
No, not Malay. Malaise. No. Malaise. Now I've got to Google.
Oh,
this
I
is
see.
the thing. This is the thing when you learn a language largely through reading, is that you pick up words that you're like, I'm sure of the meaning.
No, I was just like, you were like, despite the Malays. And I was like, now what did they ever do to you?
Now what have the Malays done to you? Malaise, general feeling of discomfort, illness, or unease whose exact cause is difficult to identify. So, not quite accurate, but that's what I was shooting for. Just before we dive into this episode, the weather has been miserably hot lately. It is so today. It's kicking up my allergies, so if about halfway through this episode we're suddenly real shouty and mad, you know what's up. Treat us with a little bit of grace, please and thank you.
For anyone who might not, I don't know what part of the world you might be in, let me just imagine I'm reaching an audience all the way in Sweden.
We've got a couple UK US listeners. I was checking the stats. We have a one or two,
sweet.
International.
Well, for those of you above the equator, we're in the heart of summer here in the southern hemisphere, and it's a scorcher.
It really is. Climate catastrophe is here, folks.
Burning up like a werewolf's body temperature.
Hey, in true fashion, what are we talking about today?
Today we'll be talking about Mystic Falls' resident werewolf, Tyler Lockwood. One of my favorite characters. I don't know how many TVD fans would agree with that statement. I think a lot of them just perceived him as eye candy, but not all that interesting. But I love him. I don't know. How do you feel?
It's interesting. I think he has a surprise good chunk in the middle of the show there that I did not see coming. And then on either side of that, I could take him or leave him. I think he's a fine enough character. I just think, like we've agreed before, doesn't get much to do sometimes. But he's fun once he's in his werewolf and then hybrid era, But maybe I'm getting ahead of us.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's get into it. He has an interesting journey. And I think for a show like The Vampire Diaries, which is, about supernatural things going on with teenagers, there's a very clear metaphor for growing up, maturing, turning into your true self, sometimes your worst self, sometimes your best self. And Tyler Lockwood is a pretty good example of that. He starts off the show as, this jerk jock stereotype, very clear what he's supposed to be. And for myself, I have broken up stages of the character's life into, 4 stages that I'm going to be talking about today.
Okay.
It is the jerk jock, then the reluctant werewolf, then the first successful hybrid, and then the alpha of the pack.
That really does chart his journey in a very... I like that climb. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so we start off with him being this jerk jock stereotype, which, I mean, anybody who's ever watched TV or gone to school will know exactly what that is. While I was doing my research, I was curious as to where this stereotype comes from. It seems to have been born in American media in the 80s, and the real life reason for these kind of people existing. For those of you who aren't clear on what a jerk jock is, it is an athlete, usually in a school setting, athletic person who is popular and a bully.
It's in the name, I suppose.
For Tyler, there is a juxtaposition with his very close friend, Matt Donovan, who is also athletic, but is a very nice guy, a very, very sweet, down-to-earth boy. And I think one of the reasons for that is because of where the jerk-jock attitude comes from. Real-life society rewarding people for men especially and boys, for athletic prowess and physical dominance and traditional displays of masculinity.
Yeah.
And how often whatever negatives come with that will be swept under the rug because, it's boys will be boys, or it's, this athlete performs well on the sports team and the school likes the good publicity. And eventually you end up with a person who feels that their social status means they can do whatever they want.
Yeah. Yeah, you see that especially in US schools where sports, especially football, are so entrenched in society and in social currency, and it's such a money-making sport that it filters down to the collegiate level, to the high school level. And like you say, it's not a new stereotype because it happens so often in real life when you pull out a young individual who can perform for you in the sporting capacity, then you just sort of shower them with all the praise, right, which can get to your head as a kid at a young age, but also all the privileges of now you don't need to study and now you don't need to do A, B, and C because the only thing you should be worried about in your life is sports. You start getting a free ride in all other capacities, and as a young person growing up, that can warp the way you view yourself and the way you view how you take up space amongst your peers when you're so constantly being prized above the rest of them.
Yes.
Oh, I also wanted to say, Tyler and Matt, very Reggie and Moose from the Archie comics.
I'm glad you bring up privilege because that is one of the stark differences between Matt and Tyler, and probably also a factor in why they are so different. As we've discussed in the Vicky episode, Matt is one of the few main characters in the show who doesn't come from a place of privilege. He's one of the quote-unquote poorer people in the town. I'd call him lower middle class. He has a nice house for someone whose mom doesn't even seem to work.
He's got his house is certainly bigger than mine was growing up, and I had multiple siblings.
But he's underprivileged by Mystic Falls standards.
Exactly.
Whereas Tyler comes from a family so wealthy that even the other founding families in town, who are all themselves privileged, are sort of subservient to the Lockwoods and their legacy. So Tyler is the rich best friend. It sort of reminds me, and I don't want to delve too deeply into that show, but it sort of reminds me of 13 Reasons Why, where you had Justin, who for all his sins was leagues better than Bryce.
Oh, Justin and Bryce. Oh God, you're so right. I wouldn't put
Justin nowhere near as good as Matt when it comes to
but I see the comparison in dynamics. Yes.
yeah. The dynamic of the underprivileged friend who has more compassion for others than the rich asshole. And I will also clarify that Tyler is not as bad as Bryce.
Well, Tyler Smallwood in the books, whom Tyler Lockwood is based on, a little bit more like Bryce than you would hope.
Yeah.
He definitely is softened for the show, and probably for the best.
It definitely makes him more sympathetic because in the books, Tyler Smallwood I think almost assaults Elena. She's saved by Stefan. Whereas in the show, the worst thing Tyler ever does is he gets, I don't know how far I don't know how far he was going to take it with Vicky. I don't want to downplay what he did. She was giving a very clear no, and he was just not having it.
That's true. Ugh.
Yeah, so, well... But, that was early season 1, and maybe the writers hadn't decided that they wanted to redeem this character yet.
And frankly, it's only up from there, thankfully. So that's the lowest we ever get.
And that's the only example of Tyler really being sexually violent in the show. But Tyler is quite an asshole. And in the beginning of the show, his major relationships are his friendship with Matt, which, as I've said, big juxtaposition there because Matt is such a kind person, such a sweet guy. You would wonder why he bothers to be friends with Tyler. And I think part of that is because Matt is the underprivileged one. Tyler is sort of his window into this Mystic Falls teen inner circle where you have all these founding family kids and Bonnie.
Who's there?
Bonnie's there too. who are all fairly privileged and pretty popular. Like, we know from things that are said that prior to season 1, Elena, Bonnie, and Caroline were all cheerleaders. Matt and Tyler are on the football team. I don't know what position Tyler plays. Matt is the quarterback, and that's stated. We never find out what Tyler does.
I truly know no other positions in American football, so
I know other positions, I just don't know what they do.
Okay, well, and that's the end of our expertise there.
But Tyler mentions that he plays like 3 varsity sports, I believe. He's very physically active. Yeah, it's something he says to his uncle Mason when he shows up. We don't really see a lot of it. Like, the most we see is him and Matt like leisurely playing basketball, and Tyler going for a lot of jogs or runs.
You gotta love that Troy Bolton fantasy of like 5'7" kid who is a university star athlete at 17. You really gotta appreciate that.
Hey, well, that's why I said I don't know what position he plays in football. Maybe it helps to be small. I don't know. I know in rugby there are positions where like it helps to be slightly smaller.
Little what's his name? Faf? Is it Faf du Plessis?
Faf,
Is that his name? Love that man.
Our national treasure.
Don't know jack and shit about him. I salute that man.
But yeah, Matt tolerates a lot of Tyler's toxic masculinity, and it's because of, you know, all the characters' relationships with each other and this web that connects them all. Tyler is messing around with Matt's sister. Matt seems to find that out like in the pilot episode, and he's immediately, like a lot of straight men, he's immediately uncomfortable with the idea of his friend being involved with his sister. And in this case, it's because he knows that Tyler is a douche. He knows that Tyler's an asshole, and it's like, and yet you remain friends with him. You tolerate him, and now that he's a threat to a woman you care about, it's like, ugh. But to Matt's credit, he doesn't make a huge deal of it. He lets it go. He's not trying to control who his sister dates. He's very, I don't want to say submissive, but he's docile in the friendship. Like, yeah, like he lets Tyler get away with a lot. I think that also feeds into why Tyler is the jerk jock. He's allowed to do this by his good-natured best friend who never calls him out on it. His relationship with Vicky as well. Jeremy, who is also in love with Vicky, they start off the show as the secondary love triangle behind Stefan, Elena, and Damon.
I would push back on that only a little bit because technically they're the first love triangle. For very much the first arc, like until Vicky dies, I would say Damon is not romantically interested in Elena. They start up in the middle arc.
That's fair. Damon is still trying to get Catherine out of the tomb that she isn't in. I never get tired of saying that.
Let it be sung from the rooftops.
But yeah, there's a love triangle with Vicky at the center. Jeremy, who is just pining after her. We've discussed it in the Jeremy and Vicky episodes, and he cannot understand why Vicky is interested in someone like Tyler. Tyler is popular and rich, yes, but he frequently mistreats Vicky. He displays embarrassment when she tries to get him to introduce her to his parents. He slut shames her, sometimes even when she's right there.
Yeah, he certainly does.
And once again, it's because he has all this shitty behavior that is rewarded, because Vicky ultimately chooses him again and again. Even though every now and then she'll slide on over to Jeremy, eventually she'll stop when Tyler gives her the slightest bit of attention or the least bit of affection. She's like, yeah, I'm still holding out hope for Tyler. And a little bit it could be because Jeremy is significantly younger than her. He's like 2 years her junior. So maybe she's hoping
like not a
for
thing
Tyler.
You would take seriously, yeah. And also it's like, I'm sure there's a complex with, we don't get much into it, or rather I should say, I don't get much into it in the Vicky episode, because it's the first episode we ever did. We were still just like figuring things out. But I have had a lot more thoughts about Vicky in that first season, the relationship with Tyler, and the complex that must exist, right? Because like you say, he's popular, he's attractive, he's a star athlete, football star, as you've apparently like elucidated to me now. And as the show would have you believe, she is a poorer kid from the other side of town. She's also got like her own like drug problems and stuff. She is a very self-assured character, but it's almost like a bit of a front, and once you get past that, you do see the insecurities of Vicky. You do see the sense that, like, maybe this dynamic has played on her a bit, of the amount of power that Tyler has, not just in their relationship, but in this town.
Yeah.
One, would it be smart of me to leave this relationship considering, you know, the status of my life? She says to Jeremy, when they're in that cemetery, when she finally does get with Jeremy, and Jeremy's like, wow, this is how you guys live? And she's like, well, yes, this is my life. This is all I've got. It sounds a bit gross and calculating, but this is not something negative I say about Vicky, but this sort of possibility in this relationship, not as an active choice, but as a thing of like, yes, I like this person, and also this person kind of elevates me a little bit in a very weird way in this town that has gross classist like shit going on. So
yeah,
I think there's all that going on too, and why Vicky doesn't always leave Tyler when she should. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the classism does play into it. And also just the high school social status, as you say, because Jeremy also comes from a privileged background, but it takes her a long time to consider him a proper romantic option. She's ashamed of Jeremy, and that's because at that point, Jeremy is like this emo kid who's like evolved into like a fully fledged stoner. The very first scene the three of them have together is Jeremy giving Vicky some drugs at school, still very much in love with her, even though she seems to be like, dude, that was a summer thing. It's over now. Now we're just like friends who get high together. And Tyler shows up, and before he even registers Jeremy, he sees Vicky. He seems genuinely pleased to see her, but he's immediately dismissive of her friends. He's like, oh, I figured I'd find you here with the druggies. And it's like, whoa, dude, these are her friends.
All right, dude. That blue blood is showing. Why don't you cover up?
He does that annoying like alpha male thing where he makes out with his girlfriend like
in front of the other man,
for Jeremy, and then goes further. Like I didn't even realize at that point Jeremy had like nail polish.
Yes,
and I was like, why did this go away?
Where did that go? The moment
Jeremy.
he cleans his act up, he loses his sense of style. Okay, cool.
Tyler makes that lame joke where he's like, oh, Pete Wentz called. He wants his nail polish back. Tyler!
Homophobia, frankly. Pete Wentz is a bi icon. You take that back.
And I was like, damn, the 2009 of it all. But also, geez, Tyler, like... Even though Jeremy hasn't said anything, I like to think that someone like Tyler would immediately notice if somebody else was interested in quote-unquote his girl.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's peacocking in that moment.
Yeah.
You never address it in the conversation that the obvious dynamic is happening, but you just assert he's basically pissing between him and Jeremy and like daring him to do anything about it. That's what Tyler's doing in that interaction. And in most interactions the three of them have.
The three of them are so messy during the Vicky chapter of that show. Like, I as much as I think if I had been watching the show, not knowing where Tyler's journey would take him, I probably would have been on Team Jeremy. But I have to say, Jeremy takes a long time. In fact, no, he doesn't take a long time. He never does. Jeremy fails to respect Vicky's choice.
Yeah.
Because, he puts himself out there and he's like, Vicky, I'm in love with you. I think that this guy doesn't deserve you. And I'm kind of hurt that our past relationship, you seem to be implying it was just about drug use and just like physical pleasure, whereas I genuinely like you. Also, Vicky, when Jeremy initially criticizes Tyler as only seeing Vicky as a piece of ass, Vicky says something along the lines of accusing Jeremy of seeing her the same way. She's basically like, well, there's no difference between the two of you, so I might as well pick Tyler. And Jeremy's hurt by that. He's like, what? You really think that I'm only physically attracted to you? Like, no, I like you as a person. Which again goes into that insecurity. Vicky, for all of her lack of privilege, is a beautiful woman. Like Kayla, the actress who plays her, beautiful woman. So she probably does know that boys do see her as physically attractive, even if she finds it difficult to get respect in the town for her social status or her financial status or her popularity at school. She knows that, boys chase after me because I'm hot. And she's learned that that's probably all they really want from me.
That is the expectation I have of others now, and also in a way that is now the asset that I have in this town.
Yes.
So might as well use it. Vicky Donovan, man, fascinating. Anyway.
Vicky revisited.
I'm honestly like, wow. There's more to say on her.
So Jeremy, he puts himself out there. He tries to get Vicky to go for him, and Vicky repeatedly turns him down in the initial part of the Vicky chapter. But in almost every scene where Vicky is flirting with Tyler or trying to get Tyler's attention or trying to get his respect or maybe arguing with Tyler, Jeremy is constantly lurking in the background and sulking. And I'm like, I get it. The dude is like 15, 16, but it's like, come on, man. Please stop following these two around.
You've got to move on.
And Tyler, for his part, seems to love rubbing it in Jeremy's face. He only really gets angry when Jeremy provokes him by like going directly to him and insulting either his intelligence or his worthiness of Vicky. For the most part, he seems pretty secure in the idea that he is the better option, which, you know, of course, he's older and richer and more popular. Jeremy has no friends, but several times Jeremy is able to get under Tyler's skin, and it always very quickly turns violent. I will say, to Jeremy's credit, he doesn't really seem afraid of Tyler.
No, Jeremy, this is the thing. I say original Jeremy. Technically, original Jeremy is the Jeremy we then get afterwards. Jeremy in his emo era will throw hands.
Oh, yeah.
He is jumping into the fight. He's an instigator, he's a provocateur, and he will throw hands to back it up. I kind of love it.
He's not afraid. And Tyler's mistreatment of Vicky is a constant source of Jeremy's ire. There's that scene that we briefly spoke about in the first episode where Tyler is making out with Vicky in the woods. She's already blown off Jeremy at this point, and Tyler is getting handsy, and Vicky is like, oh, we're not hooking up against a tree. Like,
yeah,
this
you're
is
insane.
Not going past kissing. And Tyler is forceful, and eventually it gets to the point where Vicky is very loudly saying no, and Tyler is ignoring her, and she says he's hurting her, and then Jeremy materializes, because of course he was following them. Mm-hmm. He materializes as Vicky manages to throw Tyler off her, and Jeremy is once again ready to throw hands, and Tyler is not about to back down, but Vicky sort of like steps between them and tells Tyler to go away. And you would think, oh, she's done with his ass now. It's like, no, she's angered him today. Tomorrow she'll be like making puppy dog eyes at him again. And before Tyler leaves, in his bitterness and frustration, he's like, oh, Vicky Donovan says no. That's a first. And it's like, oh, this is the way. This is the way that Tyler views his main romantic interest.
Yeah, it's not great. I've said it before. Season 1, Tyler deserves to get bit a little bit, actually.
He does. But I'm interested in... I see the various versions of Tyler as often being the result of, I think, a lot of the, I don't want to call them father figures, so I'll just call them the older male figures in his life.
Yeah.
So in season 1, we see shades of it, you know, as much as will be allowed in a PG-13 show, that Tyler's father, the wealthy mayor Richard Lockwood, is verbally and physically abusive. There is a point later on in the story, once the tomb vampires have been let out, that Richard Lockwood meets up, well, he and Tyler run into Anna and Pearl. And Pearl takes an interest in him when she realizes that he's a Lockwood. And she's like, oh, I can pump him for information on this town that I insist on living in. Go see the episode for how I feel about that.
Strong opinions on vampires who won't leave Mystic Falls.
Because Pearl is played by, you know, Kelly who is another gorgeous, gorgeous woman, Richard Lockwood is appreciative of her conversation. And he begins to like blatantly flirt with her as his son is right there.
This is a married man.
Married man. Tyler understandably gets pissed off. He walks away and goes over to Matt. Matt asks Tyler who his father is talking to, and Tyler's like, I don't know. All I know is it's not my mom. He calls his dad creepy. He calls his dad out for, his dad says that Pearl looks like a wealthy woman and she's one of his constituents. And, you know, he's a mayor. He needs to get the vote. And Tyler's like, you can tell all that from looking at her ass?
It's honestly interesting to see Tyler kind of decry these acts when it's like you view Tyler and how he treats women and see that this is a one-to-one buddy. That's your tree and you're the apple. I don't know if you realize.
He is the apple of that tree. All of Richard's violence and toxic masculinity and really misogyny has filtered down into his son. Of course, eventually we learn that some of this is because of the whole lycanthropy thing. There's the well-known scene later on in the story when Jeremy and Tyler are sort of calming down with the whole rivalry thing. It flares up again and they get into yet another fist fight because Tyler can't help himself and slut shames Vicky again.
He sure does.
I think there's like 3 times where Tyler just makes the opportunity to take a dig at Vicky. The first time I've said where he's like, Vicky Donovan says no. That's a first. The second time is at a football game where once again Vicky has made her choice and she's chosen Tyler. Tyler is feeling frustrated because of Stefan, which I'll get into that. Put a pin in that. He's feeling frustrated because he feels like Stefan is stealing his shine, and he happens to come across Jeremy and he's like, oh good, someone I can bully and make myself feel better.
Yeah, honestly, here's an opportunity that fell right into my lap. That's all it is.
He goes over to Jeremy and he's like, oh, don't look so sad, Gilbert. You can have her when I'm done. Vicky is standing right behind him when he says this.
Oh, God.
And a fight breaks out. And the final time, I think, is actually after Vicky has died. Although I don't think that Tyler and Jeremy are aware of this because of all the lies that Elena and the Salvatore brothers have concocted. But Jeremy is surprised at a career day to see that Tyler has some artistic talent and some interest in art, which Jeremy himself, he's a bit of a sketcher. So he goes over to Tyler trying to make some polite conversation, and he's like, oh, like it's interesting that you like to draw. And Tyler's like, why the hell are you talking to me? And Jeremy's like, no, it's just
common ground.
It's something else that we have.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
It's something else we have in common. And Tyler's like, something else? What's the other thing we have in common? Vicky? Like, we should be friends because we screwed the same chick. And before Jeremy even has time, Tyler once again slut shames Vicky by saying Jeremy can go be friends with any of the other number of men that Vicky has slept with. He doesn't need to be friends with Tyler.
She's not even here and she's catching strays. She's dead in the ground.
She's dead! And given how the other side works, it's possible that she was there in that moment listening to this. They almost fight, and then Alaric and Mayor Lockwood break up the fight. And then Mayor Lockwood leads the two of them away. And Alaric's like, where are you going? And he's like, no, I'm just gonna, they should, all fights should end in a handshake. I'm gonna make them, apologize like mature boys and walk away from this with their heads held high. Then he leads them out in the back of the school and he's like, okay, we're all alone, fight. Like, get this out of your system. I'm tired of this nonsense. Just beat each other up for all I care. I just want this to be over, because that's how men solve their problems.
Yeah.
And of course, at the idea of this parental authoritative figure telling them to now fight for his satisfaction, both teenagers are like, no, it's okay. We don't want to anymore.
Now that you want us to do it. And I'm glad it's a moment for Jeremy to see, like, oh, this is some weird shit I don't want to get involved in. Your dad's messed up.
Jeremy is perplexed. Tyler looks a little bit more like embarrassed / annoyed. And I'm like, I don't think this is the first time that his dad has done something weird like
Similar.
this. Or at least expressed this kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Tyler tries to leave. Jeremy tries to leave. He stops them both. And eventually he's like, no. You're not going to fight in there like pansies. You're going to fight out here like men. And he physically shoves Tyler into Jeremy, trying to get them to fight. And thankfully, Alaric shows up at that point and diffuses the situation somewhat with his own display of alpha male posturing, because unfortunately that's the only thing that someone like Mayor Lockwood responds to.
Only language they understand.
Mayor Lockwood gets angry at Alaric. He threatens Alaric by saying, I'm the mayor of this town. I could have your job like that, because Alaric is a high school teacher in the town. And Alaric's like, yeah, you could do that. And then maybe you and me will be in this parking lot having a fist fight.
And that is the reality of it, right? Is that once you put Rick and Mayor Lockwood next to each other, once a real man shows up and Mayor Lockwood retreats into the power of his wealth and his privilege rather than his fists, because that's all a show, right? That's all the pretense and the peacockery of masculinity. And then Rick shows up, who's largely a very chill dude, sees a bunch of kids that need to be removed from an unsafe situation and goes, are we gonna go right now? Because I'll go and I will win. So just know that up front. And that ends the whole situation. That is the immediate deflation of Richard Lockwood. And I love it.
Before he leaves, though, he tells Alaric, you've been marked. Which is an interesting phrase. Let's put a pin in that. We will come back to that phrase. He says you've been marked.
We'll come back to that later.
We'll come back to that. But yeah, on the topic of Tyler's jerk jock status, it's mainly rooted in those three relationships. His relationship with Jeremy, who is his rival and the easy target to bully because Jeremy is less popular. Jeremy is younger. Jeremy is supposed to be physically weaker. Stephen R. McQueen doesn't look like a very
Is
weak
easily
person.
5 or 6 inches taller than Tyler and is not a small guy.
But
He's got
every
some
every
muscle
fight
on
they
him.
get into, if they're left alone for long enough, Tyler gains the upper hand. And I'm like, okay, I guess it's fine.
Fair enough.
He's the athlete. And then it's Vicky, the girl who there are times when he does seem to genuinely like her.
Yeah.
As I'm sure in his own household, his father has some measure of genuine love for his wife, but he just can't seem to help himself when it comes to his ill treatment of her. He just doesn't have enough respect for her ultimately.
So you say 3, I want to introduce the 4th one, and the 4th one is Carol Lockwood. I think that both avenues of his upbringing, while Carol Lockwood is definitely a character that most of the time is supposed to be like the oblivious, slightly foolish, often tipsy mom character, right?
Often tipsy.
That is who Carol turns into. Early Carol Lockwood is very much like Southern white woman, mayor's wife, rich white woman in a small town. She plays that excellently, where it's like Richard Lockwood, very much the overt masculine figure, the one who pulls you into an alley and makes you fight your friend as some sort of show of force. Carol Lockwood sits in polite society, dresses up in a really nice dress and puts on impeccable makeup, and then tells you your gutter trash girlfriend shouldn't be at this party.
She does! And I want
That's
to
who
say,
Carol Lockwood is.
I want to say Carol also far more observant than her husband, because
Yes.
the first scene where Tyler has again convinced Vicky that this is a real relationship and that he really is the best option. She's working as a waiter, as you do when you have bills to pay and your mother is never around. She's working as a waitress and she's serving Tyler and his parents who are at the Mystic Grill because there's nowhere else to go in that town. She is sort of being very smiley and flirty with Tyler, and I guess assuming that Tyler's about to be like, oh, hey, mom and dad, this is my girlfriend, Vicky. Or at least, this is Vicky.
This is Vicky at all. Mention me in some capacity.
Tyler gives no indication that he even knows who she is. Much less that they go to the same school or that he's been friends with her brother for years. She asks if Tyler wants a refill, and Tyler's like, no thanks. And she hovers for a bit. And then his parents are just like, oh, thanks, sweetheart. And then she walks away and she's like, no problem.
Which, considering the setup of this town, it's insane to think they wouldn't know who she was.
Exactly.
She's the Donovan. The Donovans are known. What?
The Donovans are known, and I'm just like, if Tyler's been friends with Matt for so many years, like, you must have glimpsed her, like, once around town.
Like picking you up from their house or something. I guess he would never have gone to Matt's house, because I don't want to project on Matt, but I was very much the friend who, I mean, my parents probably wouldn't let me have people over, but I would not invite my friends over to my house knowing that they were like, at least even slightly well-to-do kids. Like, nobody's coming over to my house to visit. So I don't know if it's like, oh, they've just never been to pick up Tyler from Matt's house and seen Vicky in the background. But it's a small town. They're the mayor.
It's a
the mayor's
small
wife.
town, and
They
everyone
have to
knows
know the
everyone.
Donovans. They went to school together with their parents.
But you know what it could be? It could be that these rich elitists have genuinely just forgotten who she is because she's not important enough to remember. It could just be that. It could be like, you're a waitress and I genuinely didn't absorb what your face looked like when you walked towards our table.
Yeah,
so I didn't realize who you were. But Carol, because the mother always knows, Carol immediately clocks the tension between Vicky and Tyler. She doesn't say anything, but like she has this lingering look where she's like, now why is my son avoiding looking at, why is my womanizing son avoiding looking at this pretty girl standing by our
Why
table?
is my horny 17-year-old son not following his penis for once? This is insane.
Later on, when Tyler's parents have left, he immediately switches back to like, oh, hi, Vicky, I'm flirty, I'm playful, I'm groping you at work. And Vicky's like, oh, so now I'm worthy of your attention because your parents have gone away. And
So now you know me.
And Tyler's like, what? No, it's not like that. Like, what, you think I'm ashamed of you? Why would I be ashamed of you? And then Vicky basically has to lead him into inviting her to one of the many Mystic Falls parties that are honoring their freaking founder families like they always do. Jeremy, who's lurking nearby as always, is listening with a keen and jealous ear. As Vicky says, oh, if you're not ashamed of me, how come you haven't invited me to the party? And then Tyler's like, do you want to be my date to the party? And then Vicky's like, no, that's stupid. Why would I want to go there?
Mind games! I love her.
Tyler, in a surprising display of charm for him, is like, yeah, it is stupid. I hate these kinds of things, but it'll be more enjoyable if you're there with me. And then it's like, oh, look at you mustering up some affection for this poor girl.
Ugh, God. That is the thing, isn't it? It's like, you play the math of like every 5 sentences he says one charming thing, so it's worth it, I guess, to stay with him. It's like, no, girl, get out.
It's enough for Vicky because she's suddenly like, Tyler walks away and she's like, you know, giggling at her phone sort of energy, like, oh my gosh, he asked me, yay. And then Jeremy, he speaks to her and he's like, you realize you had to ask him to invite you.
It's like, Jeremy, where did you come from? Did you jump out of a dumpster? Were you listening to that entire conversation, buddy?
I'm proud of Vicky because at that point she's like, screw you, Jeremy.
Like, what are you doing here?
I'm like, does Jeremy just go to the Mystic Grill every day, sit there, not order anything, and just like wait to see what Tyler and Vicky do?
I think so. I think he sits in that back corner, hood on, earphones in, and just seethes watching them be a couple.
When her shift ends, he comes to her with the minutes of the day and he's like, okay, so here are all the ways Tyler mistreated you that I wouldn't have. In that scene, Jeremy tells her that Tyler is the wrong choice, but she's making it anyway. And she does look a little bit like confused. And in that love triangle, I will say, Vicky, you are the oldest amongst these 3 people, and you are kind of toying with these boys. They are constantly at each other's throats because you can't make up your mind. It's not like she is solidly disinterested in Jeremy. She's very flirtatious. She's very friendly. She keeps coming to him and being like, actually, you know what? It wasn't just sex and drugs. I did like you. Yeah. But then Tyler. And every time Tyler upsets her, she welcomes Jeremy's affection and attention. But then once she's calmed down and Tyler, like, you know, does the bare minimum, then she's like, okay, Tyler's my boyfriend again.
Yeah, I guess I can't sit here and expect the 15-year-old in this dynamic to make the emotionally healthy choice and just disengage from all this. For him, this is like the greatest love he's ever experienced in his life. And in a lot of ways, that's true because it's the only one he has experienced. So it's like Jeremy's not going to let this go, you know? I don't know.
When they eventually go to the party, that's when we see that Tyler is definitely embarrassed by Vicky. He makes a beeline for her when he sees her approaching so that he doesn't have to let her in through the front door where his parents are welcoming guests into their house. He's like, no, let's go around the back because this queue is too long and I don't want you to have to wait in line.
Yeah, this is for you and I'm going to make your experience at this party better. I'm not hiding you from my mom.
He spends the entire night like keeping her away from the family, and Vicky isn't dumb. She clocks what's going on and she asks, she tries to give him a chance to, you know, be a gentleman, be a nice boyfriend. And she's like, oh, this is a beautiful house that I've never been to, even though we've been involved for months. Do you want to show me around? And Tyler's like, no, the house is stupid. Let's stay exactly where we are.
God. Listen, no one said he was smart. Unfortunately, no one said Tyler Lockwood was smart.
And then Vicky is like, oh, okay. Or we could just sneak upstairs to your bedroom, since, you know, that's probably all you're interested in using me for. Or maybe I could just go get drunk and give the pastor a lap dance, because you seem embarrassed, like you seem worried that I'm going to do something wild and crazy because I'm gutter trash.
Vicky! Did you say give the pastor a lap dance?
That's what she says. She's like, oh, maybe I should just go give the pastor a lap dance.
Now we know she was talking about Pastor Young, so, you know, you can't have that mental image.
Well, I think she calls him Pastor Bill. I don't know if that's Pastor Young's first name.
No idea. No idea.
Speaking of Tyler Lockwood and first names, his father's first name changes in his first appearance.
Oh!
As I've mentioned once before. He's Charles. The first time he's addressed by name, his wife calls him Charles. And then forever after that, he's Richard. So I don't know.
Better. Dick Lockwood. It works perfectly.
Yes, Dick Lockwood. Now imagine if he'd kept the original surname of Dick Smallwood. That would have been unfortunate.
I do think that's why they changed it to Lockwood, though, quite honestly. I think Smallwood worked in the 90s when that book came out, but like 2009, rife for like joke material.
Interestingly, I think if he had remained Charles, that name is like, its root is linked to Carol, his wife's name. And Caroline. So,
wow.
For whatever that's worth.
The Oedipus complex is real.
We'll get to Caroline. We'll get to Caroline. Who is largely irrelevant during Tyler's jerk jock era.
Oh, yeah. They barely interact.
But yeah, before I don't want to get ahead of myself. I've got a lot to say about Caroline. Love Caroline's role in this story. But Tyler tells Vicky in that scene, "Oh no, you're being crazy, girl. I'm not embarrassed by you." And Vicky's like, "Well, come, let's go meet your parents." And Tyler's like, "No, let's not do that." And she calls him out on it. She's like, yeah, it's pretty pathetic that you can't stand up to your mommy. And it's interesting that she chooses mommy, not both his parents or his father specifically.
Oh yeah,
but she chooses the mom as the thing that he's afraid of. Whether that's to emasculate him or
because she's clocked the dynamic at the very least. She can see that that's the fear there. That's the Richard Lockwood doesn't have a huge issue with Vicky. If he does, he's not invested in that respect. The most Richard is involved is that, oh, my son has a girlfriend. Okay, good. I know he's not gay. That's about as much Richard is concerned with.
I think absolutely Richard would respect that Tyler's dating this girl because she's hot. It's not that deep.
Yes. And it's important that Richard thinks she's hot, even though she's a minor. But we won't get into that.
Oh, no.
Carol is the one to worry about because the moms, especially with boy moms, is the thing. Vicky knows she's a boy mom. She's very protective of her perfect son. And she's the one that Vicky has to either impress or deal with when it comes to being Tyler's girlfriend. Vicky sees the whole game.
Yeah, and Carol, because of the dynamic of these Mystic Falls elite families, Carol Lockwood is the one who'd be like, let me examine your entire pedigree and see whether you are worthy of being with my son, even just for a bit, even if this isn't like a long-term thing. How dare you approach our family tree and not be a Gilbert?
Exactly. You're not a Gilbert, you're not a Fell. Like, who do you think you are in this?
Vicky and Tyler start arguing in that scene. She's trying to drag Tyler off, I guess, towards his parents, and Tyler gets angry and like a little bit physical, like he yanks his arm out of her grip. And then Carol appears and she's like, "What's going on here? Like, what's the issue? I sensed discord in my house."
And I teleported with my demon powers to neutralize it before it harshes the social vibe.
I like that in that scene, despite how it ends, Carol apologizes for Tyler's behavior. She's basically like, my son is a boorish idiot. He gets it from his dad. I'm so sorry for his rudeness. Vicky immediately becomes subservient and she's like, "Oh, no, ma'am, it's fine. We were just talking."
Falls into the trap.
Carol is like, "Oh, you're Vicky, Matt Donovan's sister, right?" And I'm like, you knew who she was. Why were you acting funny the other day?
She's playing the long game. This is the shit that these rich southern white women do. They're playing the weird social web. Ugh.
Vicky tells Carol, no, Tyler and I were just saying goodnight, and she leaves in a huff. And Tyler does seem genuinely sad to see her go, but his mommy is behind him, so he doesn't say a word. And Carol leans over and whispers in her son's ear, "That's what happens when you let the trash into the party." Which, damn, Carol, what did Vicky ever do to you?
Beautiful performance of just like a vindictive middle-aged woman. I love her. I forget her first name. What is the actress's name again?
I can't remember her. I mean, she's much nicer as Lydia's mother.
Oh, but she's the same person. She's a nicer version of this character by relativity.
Ooh, Lydia, I love that she plays Lydia's mother, and the actor who plays Richard Lockwood plays Jackson's father.
Plays Jackson's dad, yes! He's also the same character there. Although, I believe it there more that he's like a loving, caring father, even though he's a rich douche. They're very concerned about their adopted son who seems to be like struggling in high school and they want the best for him. I like that dynamic a bit more. I thought you were going to say it's funny that she played Lydia's mom and then the guy who played Styles' dad is her husband in real life. Lyndon Ashby.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
The original Johnny Cage of Mortal Kombat.
A lot of crossover in these supernatural teen shows.
Yeah, exactly.
A random jogger that Logan Fell snacks on is Scott McCall's mom.
Oh, Melissa Delgado!
She jogs past Logan Fell, who's a newly minted vampire, briefly flirts with her, and then he eats her. And it's like, oh, not Nurse McCall.
Yeah, not Melissa McCall! Yeah, I said Melissa Delgado. I forgot that, like, the whole thing is that she married a McCall and she's the Delgado from which Scott is, like, because the actor, obviously, Tyler Posey, is Hispanic and it's like, oh, we've got to kind of show that somehow. I had always thought, because I didn't know that that actress is Hispanic. In fact, I'm not sure. I'd have to double check. But, like, I always thought his dad was Hispanic and then he was, like, not in the picture. And then when his dad showed up and he was, like, this white FBI man, I was like, hold on, what's happening here? I'm confused.
I was never entirely sure about the casting of Tyler Posey's on-screen parents when it came to their ethnicity. But that's just because I didn't Google the actors.
That's fair. Textually, though, they codify that Scott is Hispanic, so that's kind of fun. Lead character of the show.
That's better than Tyler Lockwood gets, because Tyler Lockwood is played by Michael Trevino, who is Hispanic. Both his parents are played by white actors.
It's like literally the son of immigrants from Mexico, and it's like, yeah, you're this white blue blood kid in Southern Virginia.
I think his mother is an immigrant. I think his father was second generation Mexican American.
Gotcha.
And then his character is just, Tyler Lockwood, English surname, family's been in the deep south since the 1800s.
Known enslavers.
Oh, we'll get to that. I think his embarrassment around Vicky shows that he knows exactly what kind of parents he's been saddled with. Again, he's not all that surprised when Richard tries to get him to fight Jeremy. And in the aftermath of that fight with Jeremy, we begin to see Jeremy soften up and be like, oh, I'm kind of messed up because of my home life. And I realize that Tyler is also kind of messed up because of his home life. He tries to be compassionate. Tyler's all like, I don't want your pity, and punches Jeremy in the face. For once, Jeremy doesn't fight back. He's just like, dude, what is your problem? You don't have to be like this. You don't have to be an aggressive douchebag. Like, what's your deal? And then Tyler takes a moment, like he's like even stunned at himself, and he's like, I don't know, and walks away. And in the background, you can see a full moon hanging in the sky.
As cheesy as the full moon part is, I do love that scene because it really takes the thing at face and goes, yeah, there's a lot going on here. And even the person experiencing this is recognizing that, like, goddamn, I can't seem to get out of this whirlpool of, like, I don't want to be this. And I appreciate that. It's not a thing you often see in real life because, like you say, this is an archetype that exists in our real lives. We've all encountered these sorts of men and, like, young boys who are so beholden to these patriarchal ideals, these misogynistic ideals, this idea of strength, of anger, and of violence as a positive thing, as like the thing you should aspire to as a masculine person in society. And very rarely do you get it's the difficulty in the discussion we're having about men, especially today, and the empathy that we have to show if we have any intent of like shifting the regime and like the paradigm, but it's difficult to show when men themselves don't want to abandon these ideals. That difficulty, that empathy of like, you can choose another way. You have to want to get out of this. You have to cherish other ideals. And it is a story at the end of the day, but it's nice to see that even in his own eyes, he's like, well, shit, man, I honestly don't know. I literally just punched you 5 seconds ago. And in the minute nobody was also escalating as I'm escalating, I had a second to go, why am I doing this? You know?
Yeah.
It's very refreshing.
And I think it's both, well, for Tyler, canonically, it's both nature and nurture, right? It's because he's been raised by this douchey father, who, by the way, in the scene where Richard tries to get them to fight, and he's like, you're not gonna fight in there like pansies, you're gonna fight out here like real men.
Yeah.
He says, that's what my father taught me. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, this shit goes
cycle.
Deep. This shit is an old-ass redwood tree, and the roots keep digging deeper. Actually, I think redwood trees' roots are notoriously shallow, so maybe that's not the best tree to call. Botanists, help me out. Thanks.
But it's like Tyler is this way because his father has raised him this way, and his father's father raised him this way. So that's the nurture side. But also, obviously, Mayor Lockwood's father would have been a Lockwood. And we know that the Lockwoods have this family curse, which is stated to come with rage and aggression issues. And it partially explains why a lot of the time Tyler just cannot seem to keep his hands to himself. Like it's very easy to get him upset. Whereas Jeremy, Jeremy's more prone to sulking. He'll throw hands, but usually only when Tyler has been like, "Bring it on, Jeremy. I'm gonna kick your ass." That's like his catchphrase with Jeremy in those first 7 episodes. Like, "I'm gonna kick your ass. I'm gonna kick your ass." At one point, Jeremy's like, "You keep saying it, but you don't make a move."
And everyone's looking at Tyler like, you keep really going on about kicking this 15-year-old's ass. I don't know if we're supporting you in this. But it's interesting because the lycanthropy, the whole werewolf curse thing, is textual, but then it is also sort of a metaphor or allegory or whatever the correct term is. I'm always mixing them. Of the sort of patriarchal aggression, right? Because up until season 2, we get this vibe that the werewolf gene seems to be passed down men. And we're told that his father before him, it is this biological thing that affects them, but it is also representative of the issue of patriarchal culture, the issue of masculinity coming down the generations, and how that, especially at this pivotal time, like you said, where at the beginning, this coming of age of Tyler, it influences you when you're deciding the kind of man you're going to be. So it's an interesting, it's in the text, it's subtext, it's all over.
Yeah.
I like it. It's very well done.
Lycanthropy as this sort of allegory for patriarchy has always interested me, especially with these supernatural shows, because often these characters who are werewolves will be overwhelmingly men, as opposed to witches who will usually be women, even in a show where males can be witches. So in Vampire Diaries, most of the witches we see are women, whereas most of the werewolves we see are men. And it's interesting when you compare the curse of lycanthropy that the Lockwood men have to deal with all the rage and aggression and the toxic masculinity, versus how the Bennett witches are this proud matriarchal family. They seem to pass the surname down the
mother side,
the woman line. Yeah, because it's whenever you find a woman, she's a Bennett witch, and I'm like, this surname hasn't gone away in 200 years.
And you named your kid a Bennett. You'll manage to do that through the 1800s. Beautiful. But also that the Bennett witches also get saddled with a lot of the negative sides of what society expects of women. They are always matrons. They're always having to help and fix and nurture other people's issues. Yes.
Yeah, especially as black women. Just so that we can wrap up the jock arc. While Tyler's main role in season 1 is to be Jeremy's rival, and it's much stronger when Vicky is alive, it's definitely, as much as there is some affection from Tyler's side there for Vicky, I think it's very clear to see that ultimately Jeremy did love her more.
For whatever that's worth.
Once Vicky is dead, Tyler does feel guilty. I think there's yet another party that's had in the aftermath of her death where Kelly Donovan, Matt's mother, has come back to town, and she's in mourning, and she's dealing with it by drinking and not dealing with it. And she and Tyler get to commiserating. While she tells Tyler that, I don't really want to think about Vicky's death right now, it makes me feel sad. Tyler's like, well, it's all I can think about because I accept that I was a pretty bad romantic partner to her, and now I can never ever make it up to her. I can never be better. And I wanted to be better. I just didn't really know how. And now it's too late. And then they start flirting and drinking together. And he makes out with his best friend's mom.
Listen, in the story, in the text, right? Tyler's wrong for that. That's a crazy thing to do.
Yes.
But outside of the text, I sort of go, why are you as an adult? I understand you're grieving your dead daughter and you have imbibed a bit. But
Absolutely. Kelly, this is a 17-year-old child who is the same age as your baby.
It's your son. Your youngest child. What are we doing, girl?
They're both really drunk, and the sad thing is, in that scene, while Tyler, he has that brief moment of clarity where he's like, yeah, I was a shitty boyfriend and I feel bad. They talk about Matt for a little bit, which is strange. They were just talking about Matt. How did he slip their minds? But they talk about Matt for a little bit, and Tyler's like, it's nice to see that at this party, Matt is sort of letting loose. That's sort of how Matt's dealing with his grief. He's like, well, my mom is sad. I'm not going to stop her from drinking. My sister's gone. I can't really, take care of her anymore. So I'm just going to try and have fun and cut loose. And the minute he does, he and Elena round the corner and see Tyler and Kelly making out. He's like, what the hell, dude? I let my guard down for 1 second.
1 second. I give myself a break from being the responsible one for a minute. No, but I do think it's interesting putting those two together, especially in opposition to Matt, where it's like Matt, who's always doing his best to do right by everyone, to be responsible, to try and hold everything together. Tyler and also Kelly are these characters who can't seem to help but screw things up.
Yep.
Right? It's almost a curse, funny enough, that everything they touch just messes up or falls apart. That archetype never sits right with me, because I'm always just I don't know, man. At a certain point, you've got to pull yourself together. You've got to take some responsibility. But with age and with life experience, I've come around to be sometimes, man, things just don't go your way. Sometimes you get a streak of things just not going your way and you make a lot of stupid decisions. So I kind of get it. So I think it is interesting to put them together in this one colossal screw up.
Yeah.
As these two characters. It's like their energies combined to create one big mess. Karmically they overlapped, the pi orbitals combined, and the shenanigans redoubled.
That's the perfect way to put it. And Matt is understandably livid in that scene, and for once he's not the bigger person. He's not I'm gonna be calm and let Tyler get away with this nonsense the way that I let him get away with beating up my ex-girlfriend's little brother and messing around with my sister and bullying people all the time. At first, Matt doesn't get physical, I will say. He is enraged, but he doesn't get physical until Tyler's like, oh, come on, dude, relax. It's not that big a deal. I just made out with your mother. Calm down.
You doing the perfect voice. And it's all right, well, now we're flying off the handle. Donovan, knock his lights out.
Matt punches Tyler in the face, but much like all Tyler's altercations with Jeremy, once Tyler hits back, and it's insane that he hits back. It's like, Tyler, you are very much in the wrong here. What are you upset about?
But, is he in control is the question. That's the question that's been in flux since the full moon scene. Is did he intend with conscious effort to fight back, or was that just instinct?
He snaps and starts to beat the living daylights out of Matt. Eventually, someone has to pull him off. I think it's Alaric again. And after that, their friendship is just in icky waters for the rest of season 1. Once Tyler has had a chance to calm down, as he does, he's like, oh yeah, let me go and bury the hatchet. Hi, Matt, wanna hang out? And Matt is just like, I'm not gonna fight you, but I'm also kind of just gonna ignore you at every turn. And by this point in the story, Caroline is dating Matt. Caroline, a person who initially Tyler didn't really approve of Matt being with. Not because he doesn't think she's attractive. Candace Akala, gorgeous woman, so naturally Tyler's like, yeah, she's hot. But he's like, she's so high maintenance. Why would you go for her?
Yeah, why would you, Tyler? I wonder.
He was used to the Caroline who wasn't her best self, the human Caroline. But eventually Matt gets him to stop. He's like, dude, I like her and I don't need to defend myself to you. And Tyler's like, okay, fine, whatever. So once they have their falling out, interestingly, it's Caroline who Tyler goes to once or twice to be like, hey, look, I'm trying to make amends with Matt. I said sorry. What more does he want?
Oh, every man ever.
Caroline is like, my brother in founding family ship.
You can't believe that's the end of it. You can't believe that solves the problem.
You made out with Matt's mom, and then you beat him up. Sorry is hey, it's gonna take a lot more than sorry.
But we're bros. I don't get it. He's supposed to be my bro. I said sorry, so he must be my bro now. It's like, dude, please.
Eventually, the hatchet is buried because of situations outside their control. I think Matt and Caroline are on a date at the grill while Tyler is playing pool nearby. He's often playing pool nearby, I've noticed. That's like, if Jeremy is sitting at the grill, like sulking and sketching, Tyler's at the grill playing pool.
Pool shark Tyler Lockwood.
But just as Caroline, who, of course, she's trying to support her boyfriend, Matt, and she understands why he's upset, but she's also trying to be like, hey, I can see that my man misses his best friend. Like, I know how much they care about each other in spite of the weird dynamic their friendship sometimes takes. She tells Matt, hey, you know, this one time Bonnie and I had a fight and we thought we'd never speak again. And Matt's like, please don't, Caroline. She's like, okay. And this is the episode in which the Founders Council is enacting their plan to get rid of the remaining tomb vampires.
Yeah, this is like the finale, right?
Yeah. Mayor Richard Lockwood, in an interesting scene for what will be the last scene with his son, he goes to Tyler and he's like, I thought I told you to go home because, of course, the founding families don't want their kids around when this whole vampire hunt is going down. It's like, I thought I told you to go home, and Tyler's sulkily like, well, I decided not to. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, well, I did what I wanted anyway, so I don't.
And his father snaps, and he's like, listen here, you little punk. When I tell you to do something, you do it. And he like grabs Tyler, and then Caroline stands up and she's like, hey, like, what's the issue? Like, what's going on? Like, Mayor Lockwood, like, is everything okay? And whether it's because of Caroline's presence, you know, she's the daughter of the sheriff, or whether he just takes a beat to be like, how do I best get my son to respond to me in this moment? Mayor Lockwood changes tactics and he softens and he pleads earnestly with Tyler. He's like, Tyler, I really need you to go. Please, just go. Like, take your friends with you. You kids need to leave. Here, even you can take the keys to my car. I need you guys to go. And by this point, Matt and Caroline are like, what's going on? And he's like, I can't tell you guys what's going on. Just please believe me when I say you need to get out of here. And then I think taken aback at his father being sort of gentle for once.
Sincere.
The sincerity throws Tyler and he's like, okay, yeah, I'll go. Also, you're giving me your car, so.
So I'm obviously going to do that. See, this is the interesting and frustrating thing about that moment. I said this to a friend in uni once when I forget what the situation was. It might be that like someone was having issues with a boyfriend or something and they were like trying to understand why is he always angry all the time, and just like it seems like he doesn't feel any other emotion. And in my very youthful and inexperienced on matters of life brain was like, you know, sometimes I feel like with a lot of guys, you know how normally as a person you have like, if you think of emotions as like a bunch of channels that are heading downhill and like water flows down all the channels as you feel different emotions. For some reason for men there's like gully at the bottom and it catches all the water from every single channel and funnels it all the way to the right into the anger channel. Everything flows into the anger channel. Like, I choose to believe that there's something else going on beneath that. There's some feeling you're trying to express, but for some reason you feel the only way you can express it is through anger and force. And it's like Richard Lockwood, obviously, in that moment, even as he tries to forcefully grab his son, it's like, clearly you're worried for his safety and you're trying to get him to leave town. Why is this the avenue you choose to express that?
Yeah.
Why is it the moment someone else calls you on it, you soften and you get to the point where it's like, here's what I'm actually trying to say. How do we get you to that point first, rather than roughhousing your kid? You know? I don't know.
Yeah.
Wow. Masculinity is weird, man.
Masculinity is weird, and Tyler is in the worst circle of it in season 1.
He's in the trenches.
He's unable to see the way Matt behaves and think to himself, oh, maybe I should be more like this. Because in his mind, as much as he likes Matt isn't something to aspire to. It's like, oh, look at Matt. Matt's girlfriend dumped him. And look at Matt. Matt has to settle for Caroline, who's... Ugh.
Right, because Matt's a chump, right? The thing is, yeah, Matt's nice, but being nice just gets you screwed over. If you're the nice guy, you finish last. That's what we heard all the time growing up, of just like,
yeah,
don't waste your time being genuine and being sincere and being kind, because you won't get anything out of it. It's all transactional.
And what Tyler gets out of his shitty behavior is a lot. Like he's privileged, he's popular, he gets the girl, quote unquote, until, eventually he goes too far and Vicky's like, okay, I want Jeremy now.
Yeah, at the end of the day, he doesn't get the girl. At the end of the day, he's miserable because he's mistreated everyone within his reach. Matt doesn't speak to him for 5 episodes because he's an asshole. You don't really get anything long term because at the end of the day, people wake up to your bullshit. And Matt survives 8 seasons.
I also think it's interesting that when Vicky becomes a vampire and her emotions are heightened, she has like one scene with Tyler where she goes to him and she almost attacks him and the Salvatores have to rescue him. Then Damon, in true Damon fashion, is like, I'm going to kill Tyler because he mildly annoyed me during this conversation. Vicky is like, no, don't you dare hurt Tyler. And I'm like, okay, she does care a little bit. But after that, it's Jeremy that she's fixated on when she's got all these heightened vampire urges. So deep down, she knew who the real man was. And that's just it. Tyler is an immature, bully little boy for all of season 1, and I think it's because he has all these safety nets, for lack of a better word, around him that let him feel that I can kind of do whatever I want, because at the end of the day, I'm still gonna be popular, I'm still gonna be rich, I'm still gonna have parents giving me this trust fund, I'm still gonna have girls who find me attractive. It's never gonna be that serious. And then his father, unfortunately, passes away, and that just rocks his life. The Gilbert device, unfortunately, has the power to affect untriggered werewolves for some reason. Never explained why untriggered werewolves have ears that would be that sensitive. There's never another instance where their ears are that sensitive.
That's why I was confused by it being a sonic thing. I thought it was just like a magic resonance thing, and I was like, yeah, other supernatural creatures that would work. Other ones that aren't witches.
It kind of is, because Emily Bennett is the one who spells the device so that it actually works.
Right.
So the device affects Richard Lockwood. And for some odd reason, Liz Forbes' deputies, I mean, hey, they were doing their jobs. They didn't think to themselves, the mayor's been taken down. Are we sure he's a vampire? They're like, nope, everyone must go. We're going to kill him too. No questions asked. And I wonder, to an extent, that was the narrative, like karmically punishing Richard Lockwood for everything that he represents as a character, because he's not just the toxic masculinity and the abusive father, he's also the legacy of these founding families and their fanatical, unfair treatment of vampires. And there's also this colonizing aspect to the Lockwoods that we've spoken about before. The Lockwoods specifically, because they're the ones who became so rich by snatching up all the land that the tomb vampires had left behind once they were exterminated or once they were entombed. A lot of those tomb vampires are POCs as well, like Beth Ann and Frederick Harper.
Yeah. Harper. I mean, you say a lot, but it's really 3 out of 27? I'm fairly certain
I don't know, the extras. Maybe some of the extras were...
I don't remember too well.
I was mentioning the ones who had been given names by the script.
Oh, okay. I'll take your word for it.
Also Pearl, Asian woman.
Yeah, but I'm always hesitant because that is the framing, right? In that season, that the vampires were... I mean, they were done dirty by the council, obviously, in that, like, nobody wants to be imprisoned in a magical tomb for however many years. Or I guess that's not what the council did. They were just trying to kill them. Nobody wants to burn up in a fire, but also...
And that some of them weren't harmful. Some of them weren't like a danger to society. They seemed to respect human life, like Harper and Pearl.
Yeah, but like, I'm just always hesitant in terms of like them using vampirism as this allegory for like minority, because this is not the freaking X-Men, you know what I'm saying? It's like vampires eat and kill people. That's kind of the thing that goes start to finish with this show. A lot more vampires that exist are the vampires that eat and kill people. And in the mid 1800s, I don't think it's an insane thing for, not to be like I'm pro Mystic Falls Council, but it's not an insane thing to go, we need to rid this town of vampires. They're killing our people. That's not a crazy thing. Damon has a line in the episode when he's trying to free Catherine, and Stefan realizes he's not just trying to free Catherine, he's trying to free all the vampires. And Stefan goes, they're going to kill all the people of Mystic Falls. And Damon's like, they deserve it for every single last one of them, for putting them in the tomb. It's like, I don't think... The vampires aren't black people. The vampires aren't enslaved people, right, who are done dirty by colonizers. Most of the vampires are white. Most of the vampires are like gentry or like... just like regular people from the colony of Mystic Falls. I don't think that they're a minority allegory. I don't think that's a good idea if that was the intention. They are monstrous, right? They are... A lot of them learn not to be. A lot of them choose the path of like, oh, I can drink from blood bags. I can do this. I can do that. But like... It's just a strange position to take on vampirism. I think that's also the intent with Augustine, which I think Augustine is largely stupid, but I do think that it does well in going, okay, we're 5 seasons in our vampire story, and we know that vampires are generally a threat to humans, but humans are also capable of a violence that is commensurate with vampires once they have the right tools and the right amount of time, right? That's kind of the idea there. But even there, it's like, the whole point of the Augustine Society was to try and use these vampires that have been slaughtering people to like maybe better human society. It's very strange to position vampires as this like persecuted minority. I don't know. This is so unrelated.
I guess yeah. As far as the council knows, I was just thinking that it's sort of this bookend thing for season 1, where Mayor Lockwood he's dragged away with the rest of the remaining tomb vampires, and rather than, you know, dying in the flames with most of them, he is killed by one of the tomb vampires who happens to be lying right next to him. And it's like, oh, they finally got their revenge on the founding families.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it's does Richard Lockwood deserve that for that? I mean, I guess so, because they are directly descended from and uphold the same, you know, ideals and traditions as they did. It's not a situation where it's like the regular people of Mystic Falls who have no idea what happened in 1850. It's like the founding council are direct descendants of the people who locked you away and are upholding the same traditions of the people who locked you away. I guess it's like, yeah, comeuppance.
I suppose, though, the tomb vampires, in particular those ones who are there in the finale, Sans, Anna, are like directly antagonistic towards the Founders Council as well. They're like, we're going to show up here. Pearl is gone. Harper's gone. There's nobody here to ask us to behave. Those who have skipped town, but we're staying here. We're going to kill all the remaining founding family members, including children, to just like get our last licks in. I don't know. Maybe they all suck. Maybe that's the lesson.
Yeah. I think we need to get more comfortable in a they all suck situation. I think that's fine.
Except that Anna dies and Damon gets away. But, you know.
Ugh. God. But yeah.
More importantly, the device also affects Tyler, who is driving away with Matt and Caroline at that point, as his father has asked him to. He's supposedly well out of range of where the device was supposed to be able to reach, but it still affects him. He is in excruciating pain, crashes the car, and they're in a car accident. It looks as though Tyler has been injured because he doesn't seem conscious. And I think that's sort of what ends Matt's anger at him for that season. Like, as Matt watches his friend and thinks that he's dying, he's like, oh my gosh, please be okay. Like, whatever else might have happened, at the end of the day, like, I do love you like a brother.
It's friggin' Travis Barker going down in that plane and surviving, and it's like, well, shit, we gotta bury the hatchet. We're getting the band back together, you know? Yeah, that situations will change everything. That might not be a reference for everybody. I had Blink-182 on the mind this week, so...
But Caroline loses consciousness a few moments later. Initially, I thought that only after Caroline's life was hanging in the balance did Tyler's eyes flash that golden amber werewolf color. It happens when he's lying on the floor after the accident being examined by the EMTs, and Caroline and Matt are still standing up, seemingly fine. So, unless the magic could sense that Caroline was about to drop from life-threatening injuries.
What happens if you put someone in a coma?
I don't know. I don't know whether the eye color was just a random werewolf flex. I don't know. Or whether it was because the curse was like, I'm about to get activated. I'm getting ready.
The conscious sentient curse coming out of its cage.
Hey, you know what? You know what? Actually, since now we're at the end of season 1, so that happens. His curse is not triggered because Caroline ultimately is rushed to the hospital, given Damon's blood. She survives. But as we enter season 2, in the aftermath of Richard Lockwood's death, and on the human side, on the Founders Council side, Carol Lockwood is beside herself. She is upset. She's like, I don't know which one of you screw-ups screwed up, but my husband was not a vampire. I don't know how you let this happen, Liz Forbes. And Liz is like, I didn't do anything. John Gilbert knocked me out. I actually was not spearheading
I actually was
thing.
against this plan, bitch. Don't come at me, because your husband screwed up.
She's like, it's not my fault that you and your husband were being chummy with John Gilbert of all people. That man doesn't even live here.
Over me? I've been holding this town together. I've been committing so much police brutality trying to keep this stupid town together. Don't come at me.
And Liz is like, I don't really care. I'm the one whose husband is dead. So, I'm very upset. And I think I'm allowed to be upset. Damon, of all people, has to defuse the situation. He's like, ladies, please, let's not fight. We're all friends here. It was a tragic thing that happened. And as soon as they leave, on the supernatural side, Damon's like, okay, Stefan, I want to know what the hell is going on with Mayor Lockwood's family, because he was affected by the device. I'm now hearing that Tyler was affected by the device because he had a car accident. The Lockwoods aren't vampires, so what the hell are they? And that leads into the mystery of the werewolf chapter. Damon and Stefan are trying to figure out what exactly the Lockwood family. Mason Lockwood comes to town seemingly to mourn his brother who has just died.
His brother, who's like 15 years older than him.
Quite a bit older than him. I don't actually know how old Mason is supposed to be.
He gives me, like, finished college a couple years ago, but, like, hasn't left the vibe behind, you know?
Maybe a aging well 30-year-old. I don't know.
Okay. I could take that.
He's old enough to have last seen Tyler when Tyler was 10, which was 7 years before.
So 25 minimum.
Yeah, because I mean, he would have had to be like an adult to like skip town and just like, ditch everything.
25, between 25 and 30.
He sees Tyler and he's like, Tyler, oh my gosh, look at you. You're like this grown-up muscular jock. Like in my mind, you're like 12 and Tyler's like, that's 2 years older than the last time you saw me.
Oh.
It becomes clear that Mason is snooping around for something called the Moonstone. Tyler immediately knows where it is, but he doesn't give it to Mason because, this uncle who he barely knows, he's like, I don't trust your intentions, and I want to know why you want it. At first, he thinks that Mason is like looking for heirlooms to sell, and Mason's like, no, I just want this. I want this sentimental moonstone that my father gave to my mother when he married her. It's like a family heirloom, but it doesn't really mean anything to the family. So I just want it, keepsake. And Tyler's like, okay, sure. I'll have a look around. It's definitely not already in my pocket. I'll let you know if I find anything.
Also, I have to say, as a family heirloom, ugly as hell. I don't know why you would give that to your wife and be like, my darling. It's enormous. I can't imagine it on a pendant. That's crazy.
It's possible Mason was just lying about that. Because, I mean, if it's been in the family, it would have stayed there anyway, whether his father gave it to his mother or not, since she's the one who would have been marrying into the family. So he could have just been lying. Tyler's like, I don't trust you, uncle I haven't seen since grade 4.
I was 9 in grade 4, so...
A lot of Americans were too. He might have been 10 in grade 5.
Oh yeah, they do that half and half thing, don't they?
When your school year starts in September, stuff gets confusing.
Yeah, that's so odd.
So while Tyler is suspicious of Mason's intentions, he doesn't yet know that anything supernatural is going on, whereas the Salvatore brothers, mostly Damon, become obsessed with finding out, what's going on. They suspect that if Tyler is supernatural, he knows about it. Damon, being Damon, keeps engineering very dangerous situations to try and prove his theory. At first, it's simple. He's just like keeping an eye on Tyler, and he's like, I don't know, the kid is pretty strong. And Stefan's like, yeah, he's strong because he's a jock. Like, that doesn't
like
mean
a
he's
football
superhuman.
player who's built like a door. I think it isn't crazy.
And then they see Mason arm wrestling Tyler and beating him with such ease that they begin to suspect, maybe Mason's the one who's supernatural. So Damon, like the childish older brother he is, forces Stefan to volunteer. It's like, who else? Who wants to try arm wrestling Mason? Damon's like, Stefan wants to go. And he arm wrestles Mason and loses. I assume he was holding back somewhat because
I have to.
a vampire would be stronger than a werewolf in human form. Damon accuses Stefan of not trying, and Stefan's like, no, I was trying. He was not as strong as a vampire, but he's definitely too strong to be human. Then Damon gets excited, and as he does when he's high on emotion, he makes dumb decisions, and he's like, okay, cool, let me go find the nearest useless human character to use for my own ends. On that day, it happened to be Carter, a dude that Bonnie had been flirting with, and he compels Carter, and he's like, okay, I want to see if the Lockwoods are like superhuman. For some reason, I'm not going to go for Mason, who Stefan just told me was super strong. Instead, I'm going to go for the teenage boy. So he's like, okay, here's what's going to happen. You are going to fight with Tyler until he fights back, and I want to see what he does. Does he fling you across a room? Does he speed off like the Flash? Like what's gonna go down?
I think it's because they weren't having luck with Mason. I think Mason's a lot more controlled in his emotions, and they know that Tyler's a hothead, so Tyler will be easier to set off.
Tyler is a hothead, but I will say at the beginning of season 2, he's already showing shades of trying to handle himself better.
Yeah.
Like he's not as easy to upset. Like when Mason beats him in the arm wrestling match, his pride is wounded. All his school chums have seen him lose, but he backs down. Like he looks pissed for a second, and then he's like, all right, Mason's the winner. It's fine. I'm just gonna walk away. And it's like, oh, look at you, Tyler. You didn't like kick a table or something.
You didn't stop beating someone to a pulp. I mean, low bar, but you're jumping it. This is good.
The poor compelled guy starts to pick a fight with Tyler. Tyler's like, dude, I don't even know you. Like, what are you doing? Like, leave me alone.
This doesn't make sense.
It's funny how the fight starts out where the guy like shoulders Tyler and like bumps into him, and he's like, oh, how dare you bump into me? I must fight you now. And Tyler's like, this seems like an insane response. Could never be me.
Tyler's the one going, you don't need to escalate this. I'm already walking away. Growth.
But of course, you know, being under mind control, the guy doesn't back down. He starts to fight Tyler. Tyler starts to fight back. And then Mason jumping around like Spider-Man. It's so much fun seeing Taylor Kinney do that. I wish the werewolves did it more often.
I do too.
High acrobatic score. He leaps around like a gymnast. His eyes flash that golden yellow werewolf color, and he's able to stop the fight by, I think he knocks the guy out. Stefan and Damon see from afar that they're like, okay, so this guy's not a human being. And Tyler glimpses Mason's eyes flash that unnatural color. So later on, they speak about it, and Tyler's like, dude, what was that? Like, what in the X-Men is this? And Mason's like, no, dude, it's just, I don't know what martial art he names.
He says, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, yes! Which, you know what? He's a surfer dude from Florida. I can believe it.
He might know crazy martial arts. He might know how to use a samurai sword. Who knows?
I can see him having some poorly translated tattoo on his bicep that he's like, yeah, this is the name of an ancient Japanese swordsmaker from the 1600s. And then it's like, nope, that's the Japanese word for milkshake.
Barbecue.
Tyler's like, you're not about to gaslight me, Uncle Mason. I saw your eyes turn golden. And Mason's like, it's a trick of the light, Tyler. I think you're tired and you need to go to sleep. I find it interesting, because now we're entering the werewolf era of Tyler. I find it interesting that at the same time that this is happening, Caroline has just become a vampire.
Yes. I was going to say earlier, funny enough, that car crash is like their simultaneous birth in a strange way.
Yeah. It's so beautiful, and I'm so excited to talk about it because, in broad strokes, Caroline is injured, she's healed with Damon's blood, Catherine Pierce suffocates her, so she wakes up in transition because the blood was still in her system. She completes the transition and becomes a vampire. And she struggles. Boy, does she struggle. She has Stefan to help her. She has Elena's sympathies. Bonnie alienates her, which is so sad to see.
I mean, yeah, she's coming from a place that makes sense. It's still hard, though.
For the most part, she's not dealing well. Also, her mom is on the Founders Council, so she's like, I can't let my mother, the vampire hunter, find out that I'm a vampire now.
That's the big one.
It's funny how often Tyler and Caroline's orbits like cross over, but don't quite align yet. Matt was often the thing drawing them together. They ran in the same social circles, but they didn't seem to really like each other much. Or, like, they didn't care much for each other. There's a scene in season 1 where they're at a party. Tyler comes with drinks and offers drinks to her and Bonnie. And Bonnie's like, nope. There was a party last year where I was hungover for like the whole weekend after I took a drink you mixed. Which I'm like,
Interesting.
okay, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But
I'm just going to take it as he mixes strong drinks because he abuses alcohol. Because he has a stronger tolerance and he didn't even realize it's because of his racism. And it doesn't mean anything concerning.
It doesn't mean anything else. We're moving on. But Caroline is like, ugh, Bonnie's being boring. I am going to get drunk until someone here is hot enough to make out with. And Tyler's like, same girl. But despite being two attractive, popular characters, they aren't talking about each other. They're like, no, not you. They're like, we're going to go our separate ways and find other people to hook
Other
up
hot
with.
people to make up with, yep.
And slowly but surely in season 2, the threads are pulled closer together. The same unfortunate guy that is compelled away from his flirtation with Bonnie to start a fight with Tyler ends up with a bloody nose because Mason knocked him out. And it is that blood that draws newbie vamp Caroline to him, and she loses control, feeds on him, and kills him, which haunts her for several seasons afterwards, where she's like, yeah, I lost control and I killed someone and I never want that to happen again. So that's what Caroline's dealing with in the background, while Tyler, who is still human, is like, no, something's going on with Mason. The next day, or some days later, Tyler is still suspicious of Mason and decides, I'm going to stalk him while he goes for his morning run. Mason runs all the way to the old Lockwood estate, which I suppose is different from whatever property Tyler lives on.
Yeah, all these families all have old houses and new houses. We learned about the Salvatore's old house that burned down. It's like, damn, you're just rolling in it, aren't you?
I would have loved to see where the Fells lived. The Fells.
Every Fell we meet is not part of any central family unit. There just seem to be a number of disparate Fells that all don't talk to each other. What's the Fell backstory?
The poor Fells. They are truly the Ravenclaws of that group.
Yeah!
It's like the one that's just mentioned but never really explored. Eventually, Tyler finds the underground Lockwood cellar and is like, what is going on in here? What in the whips and chains excite me? Like, there's manacles, there's chains and shackles, barred, reinforced doors, and all sorts of peculiar claw marks on the wall. At the same time, the Salvatore brothers and Elena are trying to decipher the exact nature of the Lockwood men's seemingly inhuman qualities. So they enlist Alaric's help and they go off to Isabel's alma mater. They do some digging just to find out if they are dealing with real werewolves. Meanwhile, Tyler is like, I'm gonna go ask my mom, like, what's going on with this creepy cellar I found on my property. And then, the closest we ever get to acknowledging the setting of this show, Tyler's mom is like, oh, Tyler, that creepy underground torture dungeon looking place, it's from the old slave days. We don't talk about Bruno. She's like, no one likes to reminisce about the old slave days, but that is what it is. And Tyler's like, oh, okay then.
Okay.
And then I don't know whether it's because he wants to do more digging, or whether he doesn't believe his mom, or whether he thinks she doesn't know what she's talking about. She did marry into this family after all. But Tyler seems fixated enough on that cellar that he's like, I'm gonna have a big high school party on those grounds.
Yep.
There's a swimming hole nearby. Let's have a party. And then Tyler's mother's like, okay, just be careful, because if anyone is injured on our property,
Liability.
our very wealthy family will be liable. Yeah. At the party, Tyler and Matt briefly discuss Caroline's distance with Matt. Matt doesn't know, but it's because of her vampirism and how she feels that she's a danger to him. It's, again, like echoes of Caroline dealing with similar growing pains in the background. Mason shows up at the party and he's like, oh, why are all these children here? I was hoping to be alone.
This is a very concerning time for there to be people nearby.
Tyler, I kind of need you and your friends to like pack it up by nightfall. Just because, people get drunk and we don't want accidents to happen. And Tyler's like, oh, I thought you were the cool young uncle and now you're like the party killer. And Mason's like, no, you can keep partying. You don't have to go home. You just can't stay here.
There you go.
And Tyler's like, all right, I'll do so. He doesn't, though. Everyone else packs up and leaves. Caroline and Tyler's orbits once again cross for the briefest of moments. She's feeling jealous that a girl named Amy Bradley is chatting up Sweet Amy.
We love Amy.
We love Amy. Too good for that world. But Amy Bradley is chatting up Matt Donovan, who at this point is still in a relationship with Caroline. There's just been some distance because I think she's just gotten her daylight ring.
She's just had her Stefan patented Vampire 101 course.
Yeah.
Yes. So she's now finally feeling comfortable enough to like broach the space with Matt.
And she sees Amy talking to Matt. She gets jealous, as Caroline does. And she compels Amy to go away. Her exact words are, find someone else to flirt with. And Amy leaves. Later on, Amy is spending time with Tyler, seemingly still acting under Caroline's compulsion. And when everyone else has left, or almost everyone else has left the party, Tyler leads Amy into this creepy underground cellar. And he's like, this looks like a fun spot to make out. And it's like, Tyler, you seem quite fixated on this creepy slave cellar where you're not gonna make out with a POC.
Yeah, like I know I'm South Asian, but I'm feeling a sense of solidarity with I think the people your family's screwed over. So I don't know if I want to be here.
But Caroline's compulsion, I guess the immediateness of the instruction wears off. And Amy's like, wait a minute, why am I don't want to do this. I don't want to hook up with you in a slave cellar. I actually like your friend Matt. And Tyler's like, damn. And she's like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go. And he's like, no, it's fine. I understand. And I
get it.
Look at that. The bar raised one level higher because a year ago when Vicky tried to leave a makeout sesh.
How far we've risen from the muck of the ground.
He's evolving. Damon, Elena, and Alaric at Duke. Stefan didn't go with them, presumably because he was doing the aforementioned Vampire 101 for Caroline. Mm-hmm. They've discovered that apparently werewolves do probably exist. They are the mortal enemies of vampires, and their bite is said to be lethal to vampires. So Elena calls Stefan and she's like, hey, don't really know what's going on with Mason and Tyler, but we think werewolves are real, and if you and Caroline get bitten, we have reason to believe you'll die. So Stefan's like, oh, cool. Let me tell Caroline she was just standing over there talking to Matt. Nope, she's gone. Okay, gotta go find her now. Caroline, much like Tyler, in the middle of a makeout sesh. She's not in a slave cellar, though. She's just in the woods.
Thank goodness.
She's patched things up with Matt, but as she makes out, the bloodlust overwhelms her and she starts to feed on him. Thankfully, Stefan pulls her off him in the nick of time, and then they hear something in the woods, growling, moving around them, because at this point, Mason Lockwood has shifted into wolf form. He tried to go to the cellar, but because Tyler and Amy hadn't actually left at that point and were still kissing down there in the slave dungeon, he was like, well, shit. Gotta go find somewhere else to do this.
Gotta go elsewhere to tie myself up. Other than my reinforced 3-level security max. Like, god damn it, Tyler.
His physicality in that scene, I don't know why, just reminded me of like someone who desperately wants to use the bathroom and is like, oh no, the stall is occupied. Gotta go somewhere else.
It's like holding it in. And the it is the wolf.
He eventually turns like inside his truck, breaks out as Stefan is like snooping around and then runs off, and then later reappears when Stefan has found Caroline. Elena hasn't told Stefan this. Elena had heard that werewolves will tend to go after vampires rather than humans if they have the choice. I don't think Stefan knows that, but Stefan does tell Caroline that, okay, we're gonna tell Matt to stay down. Matt is a bit dazed from the blood loss, I guess. And now we're gonna vamp rush away and the wolf is gonna come after us, but we need to go like top speed to lead it away from Matt and also not get caught. So they race off, and unfortunately, they happen to run all the way to the slave cellar, where Tyler is just...
All roads lead back to the slave cellar.
Tyler comes out. He's like, what are you guys doing here? And Caroline's like, what exactly are we running from? And then Mason jumps out of the shadows in wolf form and pounces on Caroline. It's so terrifying because she has no idea what's going on and she's like screaming for Stefan to help her. Stefan tackles Mason off of Caroline, and then the wolf like turns around and gets ready to attack them, and then Tyler yells no, and for some strange reason the wolf responds to him. He's still acting a bit aggressive, but he does like make eye contact with Tyler and then run off.
To be clear, because I don't know if it needs saying, but this is a full wolf. This is like,
yes.
He looks like an actual real life wolf, if maybe a little larger.
I don't even think he's larger because like the Twilight wolves, for instance, are wolf shaped but huge. Like
Yeah,
they're described
certainly
as
not
bear
that big.
size.
Certainly not that big. Like, actually, no, you're right, because I forget wolves are actually quite large. They're not like dog-sized. Like, wolves will come up just above your waist, I think. But the point being, it's not on the level of comparisons with other stories that do lycanthropy. It's not like a werewolf form that's like kind of man, kind of wolf. You transform into a wolf.
Which, put a pin in that, we'll get to that in a moment. Mason runs off and they don't see him for the rest of the night. Caroline compels away Matt's memories of her vampirism. Caroline decides, I think this relationship needs to end just for his safety. Stefan's like, I ain't gonna tell you what to do, girl, but she's like, no,
It's the most responsible thing, yeah.
And she asks Stefan, by the way, what are we gonna do about Tyler? Because kind of seems like something's going on there. He saw us. We encountered a werewolf. Now we don't even know what he knows and doesn't know. And Stefan's like, yeah, we'll handle that. Just deal with your relationship drama first. And so Caroline engineers a fight with Matt so that, you know, he breaks things off with her. And thus, Caroline Forbes is now single. Wonder why that would be important.
All right. Anyway.
As dawn approaches, Tyler comes across Mason's truck and his literal bondage, as well as his spare clothes. And Mason, who is human-shaped again, is like, hi, Tyler. Well, you caught me. I think it's a few days later, because it seems as though some time has passed. And Tyler's like, Mason, we need to talk about what happened the other night. You've been avoiding me.
Yeah, remember when you turned into an enormous freaking wolf? I think maybe that warrants some explanation.
And Mason's like, what is there to discuss? Like, yeah, I'm a werewolf. Don't make such a big deal out of it, bro. Like, come on. Tyler keeps, like, insisting on info, and Mason is like, no, look, the best thing for you is to be kept in the dark. He does let slip that it's a curse that must be triggered, and he tells Tyler that Richard Lockwood knew nothing about it, and it's best if Tyler doesn't either. But that's all the info that he gives Tyler. And Mason goes off to socialize at the Gilbert house because he knew Jenna Summers in high school. Because as we say, everyone in this town knows everyone in this town.
All interlinked, all in the web.
Around this time, Catherine Pierce has breezed back into town because it's season 2. Year of the Cat. This is the episode in which we learn about Catherine's knowledge of the Lockwoods, specifically George Lockwood, one of Tyler's ancestors, who, because I guess, as we'll learn, the Moonstone is important to werewolves. She knew that George would see this as something valuable and worth bargaining for. He keeps it, and that's how it stays in the family forever, until we get to present day, where Tyler's walking around with it in his pockets, I guess, and lying to Mason that he doesn't know where it is. In the same episode, Damon antagonizes Mason, Mason's trying to be like, bro, I'm a surfer dude. I didn't watch Twilight. I don't believe in this whole werewolf versus vampire nonsense. We don't have to be enemies.
I'm not involved in that shit. Like, don't get me started. And what does Damon do? Gets him started.
Damon's like, I'm not having fun unless I'm making enemies. So let me stab you with silverware and see if the folklore about werewolves and silver is true. It isn't, and that becomes confusing going forward. But apparently the silver has no effect on Mason whatsoever. And then Mason's like, okay, well, now I'm annoyed. Now you've made an enemy. And Damon's like, ooh, I'm so scared.
Damon pisses me off. It's like, what are you doing, dude? He was just here. He was just in town, in his home. And you decided to start some shit, and now you're getting huffy? Oh my god.
I think Damon just is so confident in his superior superpowers, I guess, that he does not consider Mason a threat at that point. Which, we're not going to act surprised. Don't act shocked.
True. True. I'm sorry, Madam CEO. You're always right.
When Mason gets home, Tyler goads him into telling him how the curse is triggered. And Mason's like, all right, you punk-ass kid, you want to know the answer? His exact words are, human blood, which then turns out to just be a figure of speech. He means like blood on your hands. You have to cause a human death, and then the curse is triggered. And it is permanent.
Arguably, blood not really required. You could snap somebody's neck and, no blood spilled.
But I like that they use that phrase, human blood, because it sort of mirrors vampirism, where you have to die and then drink human blood to complete the transition. So yeah, Tyler still doesn't give him the Moonstone, because I still don't know why you want it. And I'm like, you know what? More intelligence and cunning than I would have expected from Tyler Lockwood.
From Tyler,
because he's like, nah.
You don't strike me as someone who's very concerned about being the man of the house. That doesn't fit. You don't have like a John Gilbert vibe, so... Like, you're clearly here for something else.
Not that Mason isn't a bit of a mentor
Not at all, yeah.
towards Tyler, because once Richard Lockwood is out of the picture, that is a role that he briefly fills.
And if anything, it's the thing that pulls him out. Or at least for the brief time that Mason is able to influence him, it's the thing that kind of centers him again, I think.
Mason, even before he comes clean about the whole werewolf thing, he's alluding to the nature of lycanthropy, and he's like, oh, Tyler, I noticed that you go into like blinding rages really easily. Is that something you've noticed? Like, does it flare up maybe once a month, like at night, when the moon is full?
Beating him over the head with a shovel. Figure it out.
And Tyler's like, well, I haven't noticed that, but I've noticed that, yeah, sometimes my blood just boils and I can't control myself. It's like I black out. And Mason's like, yeah, you need to learn to work on that. And once he has come clean about lycanthropy and how the curse is triggered, he's like, okay, so now you know it's human blood that triggers the curse. There's a flashback where Mason tells Tyler that, yeah, one day I was just partying it up in Florida, you know, surfer dude from a wealthy background who's blown through his trust fund already. When my friend Jimmy, we'd all been drinking, but Jimmy just comes up to me and he's like, oh, you've been sleeping with my girl. And I'm like, what? Dude, no, be chilled. And then Jimmy attacks me and he beats me up and I try to get him to stop, but, you know, then I get angry because I'm a Lockwood man and I tackle him to the ground. And he cracks his head on the concrete. And it's like, oh, snap. Mason's curse is triggered because of this. And we later learn that Catherine, who was romantically involved with Mason at the time, although I don't think was being open about her vampirism, had engineered the whole thing, as she does. Mason shows up and he's like, oh my gosh, Catherine, babe, Jimmy attacked me for no reason because he thought I was sleeping with his girlfriend and I accidentally killed him and now I feel all weird. Maybe I'm just in shock. I don't know what's happening. And Catherine's like, oh, my poor sweet baby, everything's gonna be okay. Grins into the camera like, everything's going according to plan.
Like my plan.
All this to say that Mason's like, dude, all it takes is one mistake, one accident, a death that was intentional or otherwise, and you're stuck with this forever. So this whole rage thing, you need to learn to get it under control. But for some reason, Tyler is less afraid and more fascinated by all this. He's like, okay, I'm still very interested in this whole, which I don't know, maybe he's being a dumb teenage boy and he's like, cool, my family have superpowers. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like you're 17 and your dad's just died and you don't really have much going on like in your life. It's like this would be something fascinating, like this legacy of your family that you didn't know about, that your dad didn't know about, you know? It's something so separate and so mysterious and secret. I would be a little fascinated.
Mason's general shadiness about the whole Moonstone thing probably is also making him question, like do I have all the info? Speaking of Mason, around this time, Stefan tries and fails to mend fences on Damon's behalf, you know, as he does.
So hard. He tries so hard to fix that problem. Not 2 seconds later,
Mason decides, I'm gonna stir the pot, and goes to Liz Forbes and he's like, Damon Salvatore is a vampire and so is Stefan. And Liz is like, that's not possible. I know Damon, he's my friend. Also, he can walk in the sun. Mason's like, you gotta get over the whole sunlight thing. It's not relevant. They're vampires and I can prove it to you. He spikes some drinks with vervain and allows Liz to, from afar, catch Stefan and Damon reacting negatively to them. Mason leads Stefan and Damon into the woods, because they believe he's the reason for the vervain. And then Liz and her deputies show up and shoot them and take them down and drag them off to yet another cellar. I don't even know which one it is.
So many
this time.
cellars. I thought it was the Lockwood cellars. This is a different set of cellars?
Maybe it is, because Mason would have known where. So yeah, that makes sense. Meanwhile, Caroline is like, okay, now my vampiring picked up on gunshots, Elena. Like, I think something's going on and I don't see either of your boy toys or my mom. Let's go and investigate. So she tracks them into the woods. And then Mason appears and he's like, I know you're a vampire, Caroline, and I'm going to tell your mom. At his threat of outing her to her mother, she like takes a step towards him and then he grabs Elena, you know, ever the available hostage. And he's like, I'll snap her neck if you try anything.
Jesus, Mason.
And I'm like, whoa, Mason, for someone who like yesterday was like, I'm so chilled, I'm not here to make enemies. You quickly decided that you'd be happy to kill teenage girls.
Wild escalation, frankly.
And she vamp rushes at him, knees him in the crotch, flings him across the woods.
There you go.
They do ultimately manage to save Stefan and Damon from being killed by Liz and her deputies. Meanwhile, Jeremy and Tyler, an unlikely pair, And in one of the last instances of them spending time together until like, I don't even know, season 3.
Mid-season 3, yeah.
Tyler's like, hey, Jeremy, you know, now that we're not fighting over the same girl and I have other things that interest me, like my family's werewolf curse, do you want to like come over and like hang with me and some girls? Amy Bradley's going to be there. This girl named Sarah who has a thing for you is going to be there. And Jeremy's like, yeah, cool, let's hang. They go over to Tyler's house and Sarah is snoopy and spots some of Jeremy's artwork in his satchel. She goes through his sketchbook and it's full of all these like wolf pictures. And then Tyler's like, now
What's that about?
Why is this boy doodling about wolves? That's a little... He's like, hey, Jeremy, come over with me to the other room to look at some of my sketches. You know that one conversation we had about how I'm also an artist?
In the middle of season 1, all these mid-season conversations we have.
Come over here to the study, away from the girls, and let's just have a private convo. And then he rounds on Jeremy and he's like, what the heck are you up to? Why are you doodling wolves? What do you know? You know, by this point, he's used to Tyler's violence and he's like, you choking me against the wall is like one of the least violent interactions we've had. I'm chill, dude. He's like, I know your secret. I know about the werewolves. I know what you are. And Tyler's like, well, I'm not actually anything yet. My Uncle Mason is a werewolf. But how do you know? And Jeremy's like, my ancestor, Jonathan Gilbert, who was constantly in everyone's business, also journaled about your family and a lycanthropy curse. Which, I'm just like, if Jonathan Gilbert knew that, it is wild that he just took that to the grave and never tried to out the Lockwoods or anything like that.
Was the noble bond between founding families so strong that he was willing to just take that to not warn anyone about that? That's insane.
I mean, a lot of the time they say that towards the end of his life, everyone thought that he was crazy and rambling, so maybe it was
Nobody
difficult for him to
believed
convince anyone. But I'm like, this is the same man who burned Emily Bennett at the stake when she had done nothing to anyone.
I keep forgetting that happened. Oh my god. Maybe that's what threw them over. Like, nobody was super concerned about a black woman being burned at the stake, but it did sort of make them go, I don't know, man, this is a lot. Like, the vampires were real, but now you're just getting crazy.
They were like, dude, it's 1864, not
We're like 200 years past the witch nonsense. Yeah, like...
But while Jeremy and Tyler are hanging out with these girls, well, this is around the time that Tyler tells Jeremy about the Moonstone. He's like, yeah, my uncle seems to be obsessed with this little thing. And then the girls come in and Sarah snatches the Moonstone away from Tyler and decides to play keep away. And Tyler gets annoyed and chases after her and accidentally knocks her down a flight of stairs. And as she lies at the bottom of the stairs motionless for a few seconds, Tyler's like, oh no, did I just kill someone? Did I just trigger my curse? Oh, snap. And then Sarah opens her eyes and she's like, psych, I'm okay. Haha, you should have seen your face.
I hate that. She's so annoying. I like the actress, though. She was in The Starving Games, which is like a parody of the Hunger Games back when parody movies were a thing.
The very tail end.
And she's also the Regina George of Mean Girls 2.
She plays Mandy.
Yeah,
Mandy with an
favorite
I.
Mean Girls movie.
With
an I? Ew.
Yes, that's literally how she introduces herself in one scene. She's like, hi, I'm Mandy with an I.
Oof, that movie was rough. Poor Megan Martin. I need her to do more. I hope she's okay.
So then later on, as Mason is like trying to check up on Liz Forbes, who, unbeknownst to him, is being detoxed from the vein so that the Salvatores and Caroline can compel away all her memories of the day, Tyler shows up and is like, Uncle Mason, I almost killed someone today. And weirdly, when I believed she was dead, I almost felt like relieved that I had triggered the curse, and that feels icky. He's so unnerved and disgusted at that feeling that he's like, I've decided I actually don't want anything to do with this anymore. Here's the Moonstone that I've been hiding from you. Just take it.
Is it relieved in the sense of, I get cool werewolf powers? I'd assumed relieved in the sense of that anxiety is gone, like at least it's over and done with.
He doesn't elaborate is the thing. He just describes positive feelings in that moment and is like, yeah, I think maybe that just scared him a bit, where he's like, I don't want to be the kind of person who'd be happy that I killed someone. So he gives Mason the Moonstone and Mason is like, yay, Catherine, babe, I got the thing.
We can go.
That doesn't happen because Jeremy has decided to just like stick himself in the supernatural at this point, as we mentioned in the Jeremy episode. And so he works with Damon to try and figure out where the Moonstone is. At this point, Alaric has learned that this Moonstone is connected to something called the Curse of the Sun and the Moon. The werewolf part of the curse was sealed in the Moonstone, and that must be why Mason is after it, because curses can be undone if you have, the ingredients that created them in the first place. So maybe he's trying to free werewolves from the curse. This is the same episode where Mason finds out that the Salvatore brothers are alive. The Salvatores learn that Mason is involved with Catherine thanks to Bonnie's psychic powers. She bumps into Mason, sees a vision of who she thinks is Elena, and then Stefan's like, nah, it couldn't be Elena. I think it's Catherine. Damon is like, Catherine couldn't possibly be interested in this fool. She must be using him to get the Moonstone. And if she wants the Moonstone, she must want it for her own reasons, although we have no idea what those might be. Damon and company, and I say Damon and company not because Damon is the leader, but just because he's like the primary antagonistic force at that point towards Mason. They enlist Bonnie's help to attack and detain Mason. Bonnie does some cool witchy scrying to try and figure out the location of the Moonstone. And then Damon begins to torture Mason for further info, while the others go off to look for the stone. Mason is in enough pain that he's like, okay, I'll talk. Catherine wants the Moonstone to break the werewolf half of the curse. He rips out Mason's heart. Before Mason dies, before Jeremy leaves, Mason's last words are asking Jeremy to help Tyler.
Aww.
Which is funny, because I don't think they have any more scenes for the rest of the season.
No, he very much does not help Tyler in any way.
Truly. Because after that, Jeremy's like in his I'm falling in love with Bonnie arc. And I don't think he even shares a scene with Tyler again.
And that's, you know what? Good for you, buddy. But like, damn, dying man's words. Does that mean nothing in this town?
Jeremy's like, I'm sorry. I saw a pretty girl and then I forgot.
And who among us?
Tyler, Lockwood, and Carol are deceived into thinking that Mason has skipped town again. Because there's nothing Team Salvatore does better than faking messages from people who they've killed.
Because they keep killing all the flaky characters, the characters who disappear anyway.
That's true. For her part, later on when Tyler is like, hey, Mom, have you heard from Uncle Mason? Carol is like, no, and I don't think we're going to, if I'm being honest, Tyler. Like, this is who your uncle is. He comes, he goes, mostly goes. And it's sad because you can see that Tyler is like, oh, damn, like I've lost another father figure. Like I was just...
Exactly. You'd become attached to him a little bit. Even if not like exactly a father figure, just an older masculine presence. He was very much like an older brother is what I was kind of getting from their vibe. Maybe that's just because they look very similar in age. I don't know.
It was sweet that despite the fact that Mason was there for his own reasons, mostly involving loyalty to Catherine of all people, that he was trying to help his nephew mourn his father. And I think on the topic of Tyler's mourning, I think it's this very interesting and sad sort of situation with someone who has lost a parent or a loved one in the broader sense, who was also an abuser. At a certain point, Tyler breaks down and says that he hated his father. And it's like, yeah, you hated him, but you're crying and sobbing over his pictures. And it's like, obviously a part of you, though angry at what this relationship was, is still mourning what it could have been and how important this father figure was. And it's like, oh, shame. And now Mason is gone and the void probably feels even bigger.
He's not in a good place, yeah, at this point in the show. It's a rough time, which explains how he ends up in the very next situation.
Tyler's mother has a nice conversation with him, though, and she also speaks about how, as much of a dick as Dick Lockwood was, she did love him, and she knows that Tyler loved him. And she tells him that it's natural to feel abandoned, but she doesn't want him to feel alone, which is sort of Tyler's through line this season. He's very much not, even though it's the season that deals with werewolves and the sun and moon curse and the moonstone.
He's not in the story.
Yeah, he's often like in the background. Even in the episode where Catherine is defeated for the time being, it's a very important episode. In the main cast, Jeremy, Elena, Caroline, Bonnie, and the Salvatore brothers are all dealing with how we're going to take Catherine Pierce down. She's dangerous. She's 500 years strong. She wants the moonstone. She's prepared to kill all the extras until she gets it. And she does. She kills Amy.
She kills Amy.
Amy walks by and she's like, hi, Elena. And Catherine's like, hi, dead. Like, snaps her spine, then snaps her neck.
Spine.
Poor Amy. She deserved better. And then later on, her bestie, Sarah, is with Matt and Tyler. Matt, who is under Catherine's compulsion.
He's sleeper cell agent waking up.
Matt, who is being uncharacteristically douchey. It's like, yeah, we're in your dad's study, we're drinking instead of partying outside with everyone else. And then he starts like mocking Tyler's relationship with his father and how he was abusive. And Tyler's like, whoa, dude, why are you acting like this? Matt continues to grow more aggressive. And then Tyler, of all people, Tyler's like, okay, calm down, Matt. Like, what's the matter? Matt slaps Tyler, and then Tyler's like, dude, what? And hey, to his credit, Tyler, probably now because he's like, I don't want to trigger that curse,
right,
doesn't immediately beat the daylights out of him again. He tries to defuse the situation, but Matt is under compulsion and tackles Tyler to the floor. It's now the second time this season that a compelled person has attacked Tyler, despite him trying to walk away. Tyler's like, honestly, I try to be the bigger man this season, and immediately everyone is coming for me.
Just when I'm trying to clean my act up, everyone's my op all of a sudden.
So Matt attacks him, and the two start to, scuffle on the floor. And from elsewhere in the house, Caroline vampires the commotion, and she comes in to help. She tries to stop the fight, but Matt refuses to back down, so she has to elbow him in the face with super strength and knock him out.
Yeah.
An action that Tyler clocks. Tyler's like, how did this skinny cheerleader knock out the quarterback?
Something's wrong in the fabric of the social hierarchy here, and I am very well attuned to how things work.
But before he can question it, Sarah, the second sleeper agent, is like, oh,
yep, the one we didn't
Matt
see
failed. So she grabs a letter opener and attacks Tyler, who then instinctively shoves her off, and she knocks her head into the table and dies instantly.
Dies
and it's like,
immediately.
What are your skulls made of in this show?
Paper and spit and hope. These skulls are not built properly in Mystic Falls. She might have hit a sharp corner. I think she hit a surface and then fell to the ground.
She hit the desk in Richard Lockwood's study. I mean, far be it for me to presume to know how hard rich people's wood is.
They've got that old-timey mahogany.
But Tyler tries to revive Sarah, but it's too late. Caroline watches Tyler yell out in pain and discomfort as his sclera turn black and his irises flare that lupine golden yellow, and his werewolf curse is finally triggered. Later on, Caroline tells Carol Lockwood, oh, Sarah was dancing drunk and she slipped and fell and died and it was just an accident. God. And she removes Matt from the vicinity. I think he's still unconscious at that point. Tyler's like, why are you covering for me, Caroline? Why didn't you just tell my mother the truth? And Caroline's like, no, it was an accident. You didn't mean to kill her. There's no need to get you in trouble. And then Tyler's like, no, you stupid dumb blonde cheerleader. You don't understand what this means.
He does not say all that. Hello? What's happening? Why am I on the Tyler defense team? What?
No, I'm kidding. Tyler is basically like, no, girl, you don't get it. This is serious. And Caroline's like, no, I get it. Believe me, I know. And Tyler's like, no, you don't. And then Caroline is like, hey, that spot where Sarah stabbed you just now, is it healed? And Tyler looks down and sees that it is healed. And he's like, oh, his lycanthropic powers have been activated. And he realizes that Caroline knows about him. At least sometime later. I don't know if it's immediately afterwards. But Caroline and Damon are discussing Tyler's newfound werewolf status. And while Caroline pities Tyler, for obvious reasons, I think she can sympathize with someone who's suddenly being turned into a supernatural creature against his will. Damon is like, no. You need to stay the hell away from him. Him finding out about us is dangerous for all of us. Damon is his usual forceful, violent self.
Because Tyler would want us dead for whatever reason.
He's like, werewolves are a danger to us all. It's not even safe for you to be in the same room with Tyler Lockwood. And I'm like, Damon, didn't you spend the better part of a week bullying Mason Lockwood?
When you didn't even know werewolves existed a week before that. I don't think you have a platform.
But Caroline heeds his warning. She's like, yeah, I guess the whole lethal werewolf bite thing is a good point.
It's a problem.
She decides she's going to feign ignorance now about everything, but it's kind of too late since she made it obvious to Tyler already that she knows something is up. It's so funny to watch her try to gaslight him, and Tyler's like, girl, I'm not stupid. You already said what you said. Because Tyler is noticing that he's got increased strength now. He accidentally snaps his locker door clean off as he's trying to turn the combination dial. Later on when he gets angry, he kicks a trash can and it flies several feet in the air before landing on someone's car. And he tries to talk to Caroline about it, but she keeps blowing him off.
She's just like, everything's fine. I was just had an adrenaline rush but that's how I was able to stop Matt. It's cool.
You're just in shock and you need to calm down and stop saying crazy things, Tyler.
Gaslight girl, keep
and then
gay
later on,
close.
he confronts her a second time in the school parking lot. And he insists that she's lying to him and demands that she answers his questions. She tries to blow him off again. And then he becomes forceful, as you do when you're a Lockwood.
I will say, in this instance, he was testing the waters. This wasn't one of those situations where it was like, I'm losing control, my anger. He was definitely like, she has to be something also, considering how strong I saw her be. So I don't think this is one of those moments where it's like, Tyler being forceful. I think he was trying to press the issue by being like, let me see how she responds to this. And it works.
Probably. We're told that once the werewolf's curse is triggered, all that rage and aggression does subside somewhat, which I had put a pin in the whole nature versus nurture thing and this generational curse of like aggression and whatnot, because it's interesting that the literal curse seems to be pushing potential werewolves to trigger it. We're like the sentient, self-aware curse. There it is again.
Orchestrating curse that lives in the blood. It wants to be let out.
It makes all of these untriggered werewolves prone to violence and anger, a situation which, as we've seen, has led to them accidentally triggering their curses.
And the minute they're turned, they're fine. That's actually, that's fascinating.
Because Tyler slowly but surely becomes a much more level-headed person once his werewolf curse is triggered. He's panicky and he's grappling with it, but he's no longer on this hair-trigger temper that he used to be on.
He's having very natural responses to a thing that is happening to him. It isn't like unreasonable violence and anger. He's very at a normal level.
As opposed to other werewolf lore where often wolves are just like aggressive by nature or after they have become werewolves. Like you see it in Twilight where the shape-shifting wolves often lose control very easily. They injure their loved ones. We're not going to get into it, but it's...
We're not.
Even in Buffy, where at a certain point, the werewolf Oz, who's also a short king werewolf like Tyler, but couldn't be more different personality-wise.
Yeah, no, Oz is so reserved and chill. He's the perfect juxtaposition of the werewolf and man. Completely different.
His lycanthropy actually makes him more aggressive. And once they're in the post-high school years and Oz has gone off to try and cure himself of his werewolf curse, or get it under control rather, he finds a way to detach himself from the cycles of the moon, but unfortunately that has the effect of him now turning into wolf form whenever he gets over emotional. So I just thought that Tyler existing in a world where being a werewolf makes you calmer than you were before is an interesting take on the usual patterns.
Yeah, I agree.
Tyler gets forceful with Caroline and she easily overpowers him and he's like, oh, what, you're stronger than me? And she just brushes it aside and sends him off.
Just like, I don't know what you're talking about, leave me alone. Runs away.
But he's not having it. He goes to her house, breaks in, and this is the sheriff's house, by the way, breaks into the sheriff's house and is like, okay, stop lying to me and blowing me off. You are going to tell me the truth. I saw you with your repeated displays of abnormal strength. You're a werewolf, aren't you?
Exactly.
And Caroline is like, that's ridiculous. I'm going to laugh in
She
your
laughs.
face that you believe in werewolves.
And he's like, why are you laughing at me? I don't know what's happening.
He gets understandably upset at the gaslighting, but then he becomes violent. He's wrecking her mom's little photograph display on the table, urging her to admit that she's a werewolf. So then she gets angry.
Because vampires, they do get angry after they've turned.
Yes. And she overpowers him again, slams him against the wall, bares her vampire face. And she's like, I'm not a werewolf. And Tyler's like, oh, okay, that's...
Gotcha. Cool. All right.
My bad.
That's on me.
Later on, they have this nice scene where they're discussing the similarities between their new supernatural states. Tyler is like, while his aggression has subsided, he's still very on edge now.
Emotionally heightened. Mm-hmm.
In a similar state to Caroline says, oh yeah, when I became a vampire, everything became heightened and there's obviously the bloodlust. And Tyler's like, well, I don't have that, but my body feels really hot. Mm-hmm. I was like, yes, it is. No, Caroline is like, no, I don't get that. That must be a werewolf thing. And Tyler asks, how can you be a vampire, though? And she's like, I don't know. How can you be a werewolf?
How can you be a werewolf?
Like, don't come for me. And through lies of omission, Caroline doesn't elaborate on how she became a vampire. But after clarifying that Tyler is the only werewolf in town, she's like,
I'm the only vampire here too.
I'm the only vampire. I'll tell you the details later. There's like a lot you need to know. There's a secret founders council that our parents are on and some other info.
Yeah.
But first, I do have to sway you to secrecy. Like, you can't tell anyone. And Tyler's like, girl, who am I gonna tell? I have no one. I'm all alone. And frankly, with Mason gone, I'm really anxious about what's going to happen at the next full moon.
That scene breaks my heart because it's like all this time that he's been following her and being like, tell me the truth, admit it to me, like trying to press the issue and flailing, frankly. He is flailing. He's lost. He's got nobody else to speak to about this. And he sees in Caroline one other tie to this like supernatural that he's only just stepped into. It's like almost she has to be like me because if she isn't, I have no one else. It's really sad.
Yeah. And Caroline immediately sees a kindred spirit in Tyler. She tells him that, when I was turned into a vampire, I was all alone, which I'm like, that's not entirely true, but...
She does specify that it's on the day that she kills somebody, because I think she was turned the one day, she awoke the next day, and that full day she was by herself, and she kills Carter at the end of the day.
She tells Tyler that I killed someone, and I don't want anyone else to have to go through that. And it's like, oh, it's sweet that these two people who have been in each other's social circles for so long, but really meant very little to each other up until now, are bonding as their supernatural journeys run parallel. And in the, with the metaphor for growing up, it's like, we know this about Caroline, that as she spends more time as her vampire self, she becomes much better. She becomes more compassionate, more self-confident. Her negative sides subside, which is pretty good for a vampire, because you would think with all the heightened emotions,
it would become worse.
Yeah. It was certainly that way for Vicky when Vicky first turned. Stefan and Damon, despite being decades old, still struggle with their worst impulses.
Stefan says it once that like Caroline's the best of them at vampirism.
She really
is the one who has the best handle on it. She thrives and it's brilliant.
And in a similar way, as Tyler journeys through lycanthropy, he moves on from being the jerk jock stereotype to this dude who's just grappling with being a reluctant werewolf. His second stage in his metamorphosis.
It's lovely to see him sort of mellow out firstly a bit and just really leave behind a lot of that like anger and frustration and the violence of it. The violence in the sense of self, not in the sense of actual physical violence, because that still lies in his future just because of the world they live in. But like he does become a more settled, a more congenial guy.
It runs parallel to this theme of having lost his father and his uncle now also being gone. He has to step into that like, man of the house role, which in a more serious way just means he kind of has to grow up now because it's just him and his mom. He doesn't have as many parental figures to help him through these things anymore. And because he can't turn to his mom with the whole lycanthropy thing, he's kind of got to deal with it on his own. The immediate next episode after Matt comes to apologize, which I think is so sweet. I'm like, Matt, you have nothing to apologize for. You were under
truly
mind compulsion. Shame, poor Maddie. But Matt comes to apologize and he's like, I have no idea why I acted the way I did, dude. I am really, really sorry. And Tyler, who has no idea about the compulsion, is like, no, man, it's fine. Which I'm like, I'm glad, Tyler, because you would have had no leg to stand on.
Yeah, it's like, what can you even say considering the stuff you've done? This is a very mature response, and I'm glad that we're still friends. Good.
Caroline and Matt are still on the outs. So he turns tail as soon as she comes over to talk to Tyler. Tyler discusses what he plans to do when the full moon comes. And Caroline is like, well, I can help with your plan. I'm super good at planning, and I'm feeling very helpful. They talk about how Caroline can't be with Matt because she can't be honest with him about her vampirism. And Tyler's like, no, I get that. You would owe the person you're with the truth. And I'm like, what a nice thing of Tyler to say. But I wonder, Tyler... I wonder if subconsciously or otherwise.
Preliminarily, yeah, he was like, let's set the stage. That would be crazy.
Teeing the ball for himself. there.
But yeah, he's got all this stuff from Mason. He's got like recordings of Mason, because Mason would record himself when he was going through his werewolf times.
You know where they find that? They find that in the creepy slave cellar, because all
Yeah,
those
of course.
the creepy slave cellar.
Where else?
It's actually Caroline who finds it, because Tyler's gone there and he's like, oh, here's all the chains and stuff that I think Mason would have used to contain himself. And then Caroline's like, oh, look at this. It's a journal and a flash drive. So they watch some video footage on the flash drive and read through the journal. And that's when Tyler realizes, oh, this is not a game.
Yeah.
There are hours and hours of Mason Lockwood's excruciating first werewolf transformation. He's journaled in his diary about how horrible it was, how all his senses were heightened, his heart was racing, his skin felt like it was on fire, and that's all before the transformation began. During the transformation, your bones will snap and contort and twist as your skeleton changes from a human being's into a wolf's. And he is mortified. We truly see him lose his cool. He's like teary-eyed. And, you know, for a former jock in front of a girl.
You joke, but like it is really transcendent almost to watch like Tyler in these scenes with Caroline be so vulnerable and so emotional when it's not something we've seen from him before, just in general. And then, like you say, to have that be in front of Caroline, this girl who he didn't have a high opinion of not too long ago. And all of a sudden it's like, damn, truly the trauma of like this werewolf curse being triggered and this situation with the supernatural has brought him up and out of a lot of stupidity that he was holding on to. It's just like, yeah, no, I've got bigger things to worry about than my image, my masculine image. This is crazy stuff going on.
It's cracked that shell wide open, and he's like, he tells Caroline in no uncertain terms, there's no way that I can go through what Mason went through. And it's like, well, Tyler, you don't have a choice.
You're gonna have to.
It's involuntary. And this was actually, I think the episode before this was where I started watching Vampire Diaries the first time.
Oh, interesting.
It's the episode Rose, where Trevor and Rose kidnap Elena. That's the main plot. And the B plot is, you know, Caroline and Tyler coming out to each other. And then that's a through line that will continue for several seasons, where a lot of the time Caroline and Tyler are dealing with the secondary issue that's happening in the background of whatever Elena and her two boyfriends are dealing with.
Right.
Basically, Tyler and Caroline are just growing closer and spending time together. And with the worst timing, while they're at Caroline's house talking things through and trying to plan for the full moon, Matt shows up and is like, hey, Caroline, I don't know, things are weird between us, but I'm still really feeling you. And why is Tyler in your house?
Yeah, it's kind of, I didn't question it when you were at his house because, you know, I kind of disappeared. But now this is strange. What's going on?
It's like, you two are friends? He said one nice thing about you in 17 years.
This doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't really know.
It's unfortunately very awkward, but that thread is just left hanging there. And then we go into the night of the full moon.
Yeah.
Poor sweet Tyler. I felt so bad for him watching this, even the first time around. He makes one last-ditch effort to contact Mason, like on the day of the full moon. Like, he calls Mason, but of course there's no answer because Mason is dead as disco.
Dead.
And he's like, okay, guess I gotta go deal with it myself. He's got his chains and stuff in his kit bag, and he's like, hey mom, gonna be out late tonight. Don't wait up for me.
Don't wait up.
And then Jules arrives. Oh, Jules.
Oh, Jules.
A character who divides my soul, because truly there are moments when I hate her, and then other moments where I'm like, oh, shame, man. No,
where it's like,
I
she
get
was
it.
right and she was true, and you lot screwed her over.
Jules shows up and drops a bomb. She's like, hey, Carol Lockwood and Tyler Lockwood. My name's Jules. I'm Mason's friend from Florida, and I'm looking for him. And Carol is like, oh, Mason left for Florida. You missed him by a few days. And Jules is like, nope, Mason never made it back to Florida. I don't know where you're getting your info from, but he is missing.
I haven't heard from him, and we were like on tap. We were connected. I would know. And they're like, listen, girly, I don't know what to tell you. He's a flake. That's just how we roll. She's like, all right. you guys are idiots. I'm gonna go look elsewhere.
Somehow Jules is able to sense Tyler's werewolf status.
She sniffs it out.
I don't know. Maybe a triggered werewolf has a scent because she calls someone who we'll later on learn is Brady, her boyfriend, played by My Name is Oliver Queen.
Yeah, Stephen Amell.
Stephen Amell.
And his CW debut.
Wild to think I had no idea who he was back then.
I was watching this up because I started in season 3. So coming back to season 2 was after I watched the whole Arrowverse. So this was crazy.
She calls him and she's like, Mason lied to us. There's another werewolf in town, his nephew Tyler. And it's like, oh, well, the last time you spoke to Mason, Tyler probably wasn't a werewolf. But it's interesting that you're able to tell that he is one.
Because the curse, it has a scent.
She's like, you smell like toxic masculinity and rage issues. You're a werewolf, aren't you?
You smell like hollow patriarchal ideals. Lycanthropy? Okay, I see.
With no one but Caroline to help him, Tyler goes to prep for his transformation. He uses Mason's journal as this sort of terrifying instruction manual. He learns that Wolfsbane will weaken him enough that he'll be less of a threat during the transformation.
He mixes it in water to make like a drink and he downs it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
He says that Mason said it was like drinking battery acid. He's like spitting up burning pieces of his own flesh as he tries to keep it down. It's rough. He says that the chains and reinforced doors of the cellar will help contain him. But Caroline is like, do we know how strong a werewolf is? And Tyler's like, I don't know. We're just gonna have to hope for the best.
I'm working off of secondhand information. There's no experience to base this on. I'm just going here. Caroline's like, all right, I'm with you to the end, buddy.
It's cute how bashful she is when Tyler starts to strip down to his like stretchy undies. She's like, oh no, you're not gonna get naked. And he's like, well, I don't think it's like the Hulk where I get to keep my pants.
Yeah.
Stretchy material.
Everything about this scene pre him turning is kind of cute. Because he's like, you don't have to stay. And she's like, no, of course I'm staying. I'm not leaving you alone. So it's all that going on. And then it's also the added like, oh, he's getting naked? Oh my. Excuse me.
Michael Trevino, man. As someone who entered the show in this stage, where Stefan was having fewer and fewer shirtless scenes, I was watching everybody fight over like Team Stefan, Team Damon, and I was like, but Tyler though, guys, like my short king.
Very much the Emmett of that situation.
You know?
Team Edward, Team Jacob. What about Emmett, the enormous guy in the background who looks like he could knock down a tree? Have we discussed this?
And he really gets to flex those muscles during his choreographed werewolf transformation. Interesting trivia. Michael Trevino had to learn that transformation sequence as a dance.
Oh, wow. I mean, it looks very good, so clearly it paid dividends. That transformation sequence is one of the best I've seen. Beyond, like, I like the novelty of the Van Helsing one where the wolf...
Oh, where he rips through his own flesh.
He rips his skin and the werewolf comes out, and then he rips the werewolf skin and the man comes out. I think that's brilliant.
That one's cool, yeah. I've never seen one like that before or since.
But this, it's like, the Vampire Diaries in general, its most shining thing in the way supernatural stuff works, it's very visceral.
Yeah.
You can feel the pain when he's transforming. You can feel that, they say it a lot, I'm breaking every bone in my body. And as he's shifting around and twisting, you can see that is genuinely happening. There's obviously a little bit of CG on top of that because his leg is twisting in ways that it shouldn't. But like, it's real messed up. And it doesn't happen all at once is the thing. He shifts for a bit and things are twisting and then he stops and he lies down and we cut away and we cut back and he's just lying there and then it starts up again. At the very least, the first werewolf transformation you have seems to happen in fits and starts. And I found that fascinating as well.
And elsewhere across town, Damon being Damon is antagonizing a new guest character.
God damn it.
Jules, who, to be fair, Jules did come there already with more antagonistic intentions than Mason because she was like, I know Mystic Falls is vampire country, and now my bestie is missing.
I'm not a fool. I
Pretty
can put
sure
one
he's
and
dead.
one together. Listen.
And Alaric and Damon try to like trick her with a Wolfsbane drink, I guess, to expose her werewolf nature. At first, I didn't realize that she knew what was up, and I was like, damn, this woman won't take a damn sip from this drink.
That's how I knew. I was like, she's taking forever to drink that thing. She can smell it. I see her. They think they're playing her. She's playing this whole situation. Never once does Jules break in the entire time she speaks to these people. Not a hint of fear, not a hint of concern, and I love that.
Because I was just like, wow, wow, she's not feeling this drink. Like, she keeps almost taking a sip and then like stopping to say something else. She's like nursing the drink but not touching it. Damon is not being very subtle. He's like, oh, finish your drink. Like, just take your drink. And I'm like, Damon, if she didn't think you were a vampire, she definitely think you're trying to roofie her. Like why are you're
That's
so
the thing, too, is
fixated
that,
on
like,
this drink.
They're both overestimating their influence. It's like every girl I know knows to not take a drink from some strange guy at a bar, and they know to cover it when they're around men. Like, I don't think you're getting this over the finish line.
She drops the pretense and she's like, yeah, I know you're a vampire and I can smell the wolfsbane in this drink.
And I sniffed you out the moment I stepped into town. Like,
Which is also interesting. She tells Damon that she smelled him when she walked into the bar, and I'm like, do vampires have a smell?
I think so.
That's one of the things that's just never explained.
I think that werewolves can smell vampires and other wolves. That's from Jules's presence in this like part of the season. She very much elucidates a lot about how werewolves work, and they seem to, it makes sense because wolves, they lead with smell rather than like sight or hearing or something like the vampires. It seems she can smell the supernatural.
I would have loved to know exactly what they smell like. I'm like, do they smell like corpses? Do they smell like people? Like what? Because in the Twilight universe, the wolves say that the vampires have this sickly sweet smell that seems to physically burn their noses as they smell it.
Of course they do. It's sickly sweet, but the werewolves smell like wet dog. Get me out of here.
To the vampire. We don't have to. You see, every time I bring up Twilight, all I do is upset you.
It's fine. It's fine. It's a logical comparison to make. It just reminds me that, wow, all the werewolf stuff was just racism, wasn't it? God.
Jules tells Damon that picking a fight with her on the night of the full moon is stupid. And Damon's like, I'm not afraid of anything. And then Jules says, well, watch your back. You've been marked. And it's like, the same thing that Richard Lockwood, who knew nothing about lycanthropy, said to Alaric when Alaric angered him. And it's like a werewolf cultural thing.
So two options are in my head. One is that they didn't always intend for Richard Lockwood to not know about his lycanthropy. And that was in the story Bible in terms of like, because shows like this, when you have a show, or at least, you know, before now everything's 8 episodes and like 3 years apart. When you do a network TV show, like a 22 episode TV show, you have a show Bible where all the stuff about like how the world works, each character and their backstory and their history, whatever, it's all in the show Bible, so that every time we cycle writers, you can reference the show Bible, so you're not just going off of like the memory of the show itself. You have context that was created before you were brought on to write for the show. So it's possible in like the werewolf language they were planning to use when they brought up a werewolf story, the idea of a werewolf marking somebody was already created way at the beginning. And then as the first season was being written, they were like, maybe it's more interesting to have Richard Lockwood be completely oblivious. He dies and his son becomes a werewolf and has nobody to teach him, at least until we bring in Mason. And then that's how it happened. And now the scene about you've been marked has already been shot, and now it doesn't make sense in context. Or it's just something he heard someone in his family growing up say as like, you know, a powerful Lockwood figure who was a werewolf and in the know, tell somebody they've been marked. And that's like the way to posture or to make someone feel fear. Or maybe he just understood it as an expression of like, watch your back. Now that you've crossed me, I'm going to make your life a living hell, right? He maybe didn't have the context for the werewolf culture, as you say, of you've been marked, but he just heard someone say it in the context of everyday conversation. Because there must have been Lockwoods who knew about their lycanthropy if Mason found out everything from Catherine. But I can't imagine that they've just been like 5 generations, 6 generations of Lockwoods who all just didn't know and never found out.
Yeah.
Most powerful family in town and none of them killed somebody? Absolutely. Absolutely not. I don't believe it. I don't believe Richard Lockwood hasn't killed somebody in his life, but that's... The story says so and so.
Hey, he's rich. He has people for that.
He has people to clean it up. Anyway, those are the two like options in my head about this you've been marked thing.
It makes sense. And the literal marking, I assume, is just Jules remembering Damon's scent, because she follows him home and attacks him, but ends up biting Rose, which seals her fate. See the Damon episode for more details on that. But that's probably one of the reasons why Jules will be remembered as like, you were a problem. You killed Rose, who...
You killed
Never heard a fly.
I doubt that's true. She was 500. But also, I put that on Damon. It's like a little bit of... Jules just bit her, but like Damon's the one who caused the problem and led Jules there. But, you know, that's just me and that's fine.
If we trace every problem back to Damon, then basically no one in this town has ever committed a crime except Catherine Pierce.
And I'm okay with that sentiment. No, I'm joking.
Meanwhile, Tyler goes through his horrific transformation. It lasts hours. Mason's journal also says that the time that the transformation takes will shorten each month. So this will be the worst and first one. So Caroline's optimistic. She's like, it'll get better. And Tyler's like, girl.
This was awful.
My skeletal structure being torn asunder. It's really sweet, though, that Caroline stays with Tyler for most of the night, trying to comfort and reassure him.
The only moment she leaves is when her life is literally in danger because he breaks free of his chains once he's closer to the wolf side. And she runs outside, closes the doors, and puts something through. And she stands there holding the doors. And she's talking him through it the whole time. He's biting through the door, his little snout's coming through. And she's like, Tyler, you can get through this, I promise. And he's like breaking the door.
That damn door!
That damn door that was supposed
he
to
repeatedly begs her to leave, but she delays her departure for so long. And when he does finally shift into an actual wolf, he breaks those bindings instantly. And I'm like, well...
And at that last moment, she really quietly cries, I'm sorry, and then she runs away.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing she did, because he immediately burst through that door, and that little dog's, like, speeding out like lightning.
That dog is so hilarious. The super fast werewolf. One of the funniest things I've seen in that show.
It's so weird.
And I'm like, yeah, the werewolves would have to have this level of speed to be able to keep up with vampires, but it is hilarious to see.
The image of a four-legged creature running really fast. It's so great. It's like
maybe it wouldn't have looked so camp if the werewolves were like unnaturally large.
Right. Because it doesn't look strange in Twilight, not to take us back there. Like, the wolves there are really fast because they can keep up with vampires. There's only one that ever eludes them. But because they're so big and they're covering so much distance in a single jump, it doesn't look unnatural that they're keeping up with like a supernaturally fast creature.
Yeah.
So I agree. I do think scale is the issue there.
Tyler just like zooms off into the night like a shadow. Eventually he turns back. Caroline comes and finds him curled up in a ball, sweating, but human and okay. And she comforts him and congratulates him on not like going out and hurting anybody. And she's like, oh, you're gonna be okay. And Tyler is so deeply traumatized. He just sobs that, no, I am not okay.
That scene makes me so sad. I told you recently, I rewatched it for other stuff and I was just scrubbing through and I found it. I was like, oh God, this is so sad. She's like covering him up with a blanket and she has him cradled in her arms and she's like cooing him through it. And he's like, no, I'm very much not okay. Just like full tears. It's rough. But he's on the other end of it.
It's so nice that she insists on being there for him. And even just that physical affection of just someone holding you and telling you that you're going to be okay can help so much. And it's probably something she really needed when she woke up and the sun was burning her and her veins were screaming for blood and she accidentally killed someone. And then Damon was like, let's just kill you.
It's just the thing. Instead of compassion, Damon came at her with a stake. And only when Stefan in that bathroom is like, you're gonna be okay. I will get you through this. And he's holding her by the face. It's like, yes. We're social creatures. We need contact to remind ourselves that we're connected, that we can come down from any emotional high. Like, that's how it works.
While Tyler is very appreciative of Caroline's help, the next day he's thanking her. She does then reveal that, oh yeah, by the way, if you were to bite me in werewolf form, I would die. And Tyler's like, wait, what? So you risked your life to help me?
Like, time?
Why? And she's like, it's not a big deal. Let's not, make a mountain out of a molehill.
I do love the contrast of the two of them. Him being so baffled that someone would do that, and her being like, this is the least I could do as your friend. Because that's the thing. She says, you're my friend. I would do anything for my friends. They're coming at it from such opposite sides of like social interaction of, why would you ever do something like this for me? Why wouldn't I do something like this for anyone? And they're coming to meet each other in the middle. It's really cute. And I love it.
And then Matt shows up. And then Matt shows up.
Sorry.
Hey, having watched the first season and the beginning of season 2 properly, I can appreciate Mataline, as I call them.
That's disgusting.
They have an official name. I just can't remember what it is. What is it?
Cathy? Cat?
It's
Cat's
not
fine,
Cathy. I think it's Marilyn.
Mariline's a lot better than Mataline. I'm so sorry to you.
I like Mataline because it sounds like Madeline.
I did like Madeline. Nobody knows that movie when I reference it. In 2 straight lines, they walk to school, or however that song went. I can't remember. Is that not the Madeline you were talking about? Are you talking about the fruit?
Yeah, I used to watch. I had a coloring in book with her and her classmates in it, and that nun.
Their little hats. They're cute.
But yeah, Matt shows up and he's like, I can see you two sneaking around, spending time together, alone. And Caroline, you out here telling me that you still care about me, but like what's going on here? And Caroline's like, Matthew Donovan Maxwell, I swear to you.
Matthew Broderick Donovan Maxwell. I assure you.
Nothing is going on between me and Tyler. And Matt believes her, to his credit. He's not one to immediately become the jealous boyfriend.
And it's not an insane thing to ask. They are spending a suspicious amount of time together all of a sudden. It all makes sense.
Caroline assuages his fears for the time being, and he kisses her, which is not what she was expecting in that moment. She responds for a second, but then she's like, don't want to start things up again. I'm still a vampire. I could hurt you. I don't know about this. Meanwhile, Rose is dying, and Damon decides that I'm gonna go and threaten Jules. Because that'll help.
Because that worked so well the last time.
I'm gonna go threaten Jules and tell her to give me the cure. And Jules is like, the cure is euthanasia. Good luck.
Kill her quick. Spare her the pain. Goodbye. Jules, you icon.
So Jules, who at the beginning of that episode wakes up from her own night as a werewolf and has just butchered this innocent group of campers.
It is. They talk about it in a later season, but yes, she's one of those wolves who prefer to go free range rather than chain themselves up for the night, which is wild. No pun intended.
She tears them apart and you could be like, oh shame, she lost control, she was in wolf form, she didn't really know what she was doing. And then like a park ranger shows up and he's like, what happened here? And she's like, oh no, my friends who I was definitely camping with and definitely know well, we were attacked last night by an animal, a wolf. It tore them apart. And I was like, girl, you should have said a bear. I don't think one wolf would have done all this. And I don't know whether werewolves in this universe ever actually eat anyone or whether they just, go at it like a dog with a rag doll, because it didn't seem like any body parts were missing.
There's never any clarity on whether they eat people like vampires do, because not to bring it back to Twilight. Twilight very specifically is the wolves don't eat people. This is a form that they take, but they are very much still sapient beings. They're not animals that are about to consume you. So it is interesting that we never get into it.
Yeah, whereas the real werewolves in the background, in the books that we don't really see much of,
oh yeah,
who actually do turn into a humanoid lycanthrope form, they are said to eat people. And it's Stephanie always dropping tidbits of interesting stuff that she has no intention to explore.
Stephanie, what are you up to? I guess now that I'm thinking about it, with the origin of werewolves in this world, it is similar. It's not like you're turning, well, you would be led to believe from this early stuff in Vampire Diaries that you're turning into this monster, but it used to be this spirit form thing where you transform and become this wolf for one night, and it's this auspicious thing amongst these origin clans of lycanthropy. But now it's treated more of a curse,
Well, I guess with Inadu
in
the originals, we do get some context as to what exactly was going on at the start of the werewolf curse. She was messing them around a bit. She was like, I'll show you my sentient curse that desperately wants to activate itself.
It's actually a piece of Inadu in all of them. It's the hollow in their veins.
But anyway, later on, Tyler goes to Caroline's house to speak to her, and he's like, I really can't understand for the life of me why you would risk death to help me.
just don't
And
get
Caroline
it. I
is
just
like,
don't get
dude,
it.
I've known you my whole life. Why are you being weird? And Tyler's like, yeah, but we were never friends before. Now you're like prepared to die just to help me. Then Caroline gets annoyed and she's like, you know what? You sound pretty ungrateful now. I just wanted to help.
I did this real nice thing for you.
I don't know what your issue is that you are so uncomfortable with people caring about you. And I'm like, shame. Caroline, if you only knew, Tyler probably would have issues with people caring about him.
He's not familiar with that. He was a douche who isolated himself when things weren't bad. He's not used to this.
She storms off, sarcastically apologizing, and just like, oh, I'm sorry that I cared.
Yeah, I'll never do it again.
And then Tyler kisses her. And it's like, there it is! The birth of Tyraline.
It is one of those romantic scenes where it's like, oh, they're fighting about something that's not what they're fighting about. It's very obvious what's happening. And then it hits all at once and it's like, oh, I see.
And you know what? Now, having full context, unlike when I first watched the series, I really like the slow burn of getting to this moment. It's like this friendship between two people who, you know, never really had common ground despite all the things they did have in common at surface level. And then, you know, slowly the supernatural brings them together. Their stories were sort of running parallel, and then they meet. And then Caroline is helping Tyler in all the ways that she knows someone needs. And Tyler is like, wow, I used to think you were just a pretty face and an empty head, but you're actually really sweet and compassionate and even more helpful than I was giving you credit for when I began to mature a bit. And then he falls for her. Unfortunately, he falls for her at a time when Caroline is starting to consider that maybe she can patch things up with Matt.
His best friend.
She's not officially dating Matt at this point.
No,
but
she is not.
She's definitely a bit confused by this.
The vibes are not final enough for this to not be weird.
Caroline is now confused and she's like, everybody needs to just stop kissing me. It's such a cute line. And I'm like, Caroline, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I know who I'd pick. No shame. Matt is a sweetie.
Matt is sweet.
Matt is a sweetie. And he's so lovely. But I'm just like, Tyler can understand you on this level that Matt can't understand.
Is the thing. The minute they were both turned into vampire and werewolf, like around the same time, it was sealed.
Yeah.
Like already they share something that Matt has no idea about until actually around this time. And also I just think they have a lot more chemistry.
Yeah.
I think Matt and Caroline are very sweet, but Tyler and Caroline have just like chemistry on another level. They feel a lot more charged, I guess.
Yes.
I don't know. It just works a lot better for me.
And I don't know if I've said this before. I've thought it. Have you heard of when dealing with love triangles, the Betty and Veronica concept?
Oh, I can kind of maybe see where it's going just based on my knowledge of the original love triangle to set off all love triangles. But do explain, please.
Yeah, so the Betty and Veronica concept, which despite the name is not gendered, it's basically when you have, on the one hand, the safer, more familiar, usually first to the party love interest.
Yeah.
It could be like the boy next door, the girl that you grew up with who was your best friend, that sort of a thing. And then on the other hand, you have the more dangerous, usually passionate, sometimes annoyingly exoticized option. And Vampire Diaries is full of them. You can make an interesting little diagram with all the different ones. Obviously, with Elena, Stefan is the Betty, Damon is the Veronica.
Yeah.
With Caroline,
Matt is the Betty and Tyler's the Veronica. I did not know it had a name. This is a trope it's possibly, because I've said to you before, I do not like love triangles. This is probably the reason why. I've definitely ranted at length about this before to people I know and also on TikTok.
the sequel second love interest.
I think actually we spoke about this in the Bonnie episode. I was talking about like love triangles and the secondary love interest and whatever. Actually, no, that one is an interesting inversion of that. But usually in this sort of love triangle, it's actually, this is an outlier that I prefer the Veronica to the Betty. And I think it's because Matt isn't character assassinated in order for this to set off. And also it's like, there's no pretense about Tyler in terms of like what kind of guy he is. There's just a lot of growth and rehabilitation in terms of Tyler. More often than not, the Veronica of the situation, and Veronica doesn't need to catch strays for this. Veronica doesn't do anything as bad as like the characters in these love triangles sometimes, especially when the love interests are men. You get like, there'll be the quote morally gray love interest, but it's like, oh, they've murdered like a bunch of people and they have definitely put you in danger before and they have done something to a friend of yours. It's all that. And then it'll be like the first love interest who shows up at the beginning. If it's in a trilogy of YA novels, they're the love interest for the first book, and the other one is like a minor antagonist, but then later you find out he wasn't an antagonist after all. He was actually really good and only pretending to be bad. And then the main love interest gets a huge character assassination in book 2. Suddenly they're the worst person you've ever heard of or seen. Suddenly they're this abject asshole that's just completely contra to who you were introduced to. And it happens so many times. I mention YA novels because that's where I kept seeing it, that it started to piss me off. All this to say, this is an outlier for me, going for the Veronica versus the Betty. And I think it's because even though around this time, this is when Matt goes to Liz Forbes, because I don't know who forgets to wipe Matt's memory, or maybe it's because he's on Vervain. He sees something vampiric happening, and Liz Forbes now starts using him as a spy to figure out what's going on with Caroline, because Caroline's a vampire. Matt is finding out about vampires, and he's being told vampires have killed a lot of people, including his sister. So it's like, that's not an unreasonable reaction. He's not the bad guy in that. So I'm okay with this because Caroline and Tyler just frankly are the better romantic couple. And Matt is not like persona non grata at the other side of this. He's still someone who we like and have in our friendship group and so forth.
I think many of the Betty and Veronica dynamics that I can think of, neither character is really assassinated. It's just, it's more that the draw for each is very different. So Tyler's the Veronica who I was rooting for, loved Matt, loved everything regarding Matt and Caroline, but I think as Caroline went on in her vampire journey,
she outgrown him.
Yeah, she had outgrown him. Tyler being the werewolf just made more sense. It's that thing of when it's nice to date someone who understands your culture.
Yeah.
Even if they're not exactly from your culture, even if it's just like an approximation, like it's better than someone who just doesn't get it.
And that's not to say that's the truth across the board, but like, yeah, there are absolutely simplicities and benefits to that.
The little sprout of Tyraline has blossomed at this point, and then it's almost immediately stepped on because then Jules shows up and she's like, hey Tyler, I'm just gonna rip the band-aid off. Your Uncle Mason is dead, and your little friend Caroline there, yeah, she and her vampire friends killed him. And Tyler's like, what vampire friends? Caroline said she's the only vampire in town. And then Jules is like, that's my sweet summer child. This is Vampire Palooza. This town is crawling with them.
And this is what they do. They lie and they kill your uncle and they A, B, and C. And it's like, at this point, he's kind of primed for that, I guess. It doesn't help that, like, I mean, Caroline had to lie. There was no way around that for the safety of her friends. But, like, the lie is only a layer on top of the fact that, like I said earlier, Tyler doesn't have anyone to talk to about this. And now Jules has showed up. She's another werewolf. And she's like, oh, you're not alone. There's others like us. I have a whole freaking pack. That just, like, stacks it up. And even though him and Caroline are going well, in general, he's still a little bit, like, wayward. So he was very easily plucked up by this werewolf pack, despite all rationality and reason suggesting maybe these guys aren't the best.
Jules takes Tyler to her pack, begins to poison him against Caroline. Tyler does go to Caroline the next day and he's like, Mason's dead. I know you've been lying about the fact that there are other vampires in this town. But I'm just clarifying, did you know Mason was dead? Did you lie to me by omission when I told you my uncle had left? And then Caroline's like, yes, but...
It's more complicated than that. And he's like, no, that's all I needed to hear.
He's like, I'm not having it. Goodbye. You are dead to me now. I've got new friends to hang with. I got my new bros, my werewolf bros. And Jules, who's like the only woman in the pack.
It's the one girl rule.
Can I just say?
You know how it works.
It's the one girl rule. And props to her because she's the one that lives the longest.
Yeah. And she's running the show, frankly. Other than Stephen Amell, who gets a little bit rowdy sometimes, she's the one who's like running shit. So they're like orchestrating like a takedown of the vampires in town, right? They're like gonna take revenge.
Yeah. As well as figure out what happened to this moonstone that the Salvatore brothers now have. They don't tell Tyler about the moonstone yet, though. They do withhold information from Tyler. It becomes a pattern of theirs, which comes back to bite them. But the first thing they do is kidnap Caroline.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Stefan gives middle sibling energy, not just little brother. He's always trying to like solve the problems and like put out the fires, and he's like, okay,
I've got to make peace with these people. I've got to make sure
yeah.
these people are okay. It's so exhausting. I commiserate with
Poor
Stefan
Stefan.
so hard.
He goes to Tyler and he's like, okay, I'm gonna be real with you. Yes, Damon did kill Mason, but Mason was also kind of being violent to us. He leaves out the part where that fight started because of Damon, but he's like, basically, we all just want to live in peace, you know, all us supernatural creatures in this town.
Also, this is Caroline Forbes we're talking about. Think for 2 seconds. You're gonna trust your new friends over this girl you've known your whole life who has done everything to protect you, when some of us were like, maybe we should just kill him and get rid of him and problem solved. She fought to protect you. She walked you through your werewolf full moon experience. And now you're gonna turn on her? Come on, buddy. She deserves better than that.
Tyler is still a little skeptical.
Yeah.
But then Jules and Brady call Stefan and they're like, hey, bring Tyler to us, who you've definitely kidnapped in order to harm.
God.
We've got your little vampire girlfriend here. And poor Caroline, shame, she really goes through that episode.
They're torturing her.
Stefan and Damon show up with Tyler at the little werewolf camp. They're like, here he is, let's do a hostage exchange. And then the werewolves like attack them. And even though it's not the full moon,
They're winning.
they're winning. Yeah, they're
not
outnumbered,
pushovers.
unfortunately. Tyler's not part of the fight. He goes into the camper van and sees Caroline locked in her cage, and she doesn't even doubt for a second where his loyalties lie. She's like, oh, Tyler, thank goodness you're here. Let me out. The latch is right there. I can't reach. And Tyler hesitates for a second, and she's like, what are you doing? Let me out. And he's like, yeah, okay, lets her out. And then as soon as she exits the van, Jules grabs her and like threatens to shoot her through the back and into the heart with a wooden bullet. The other werewolves are getting ready to kill Stefan and Damon, and Tyler's just like frozen, being like, I don't know whose side I'm on. I don't know. I don't really know any of you.
I truly don't know anyone here. Except Caroline, which he doesn't seem to latch on to hard enough. But then Jonas Martin, he shows up.
Jonas Martin shows up and saves the day, and the vampires get away. Later that night, Tyler goes to Caroline's house and is like, hey, Care, things got a little out of hand. I'm sorry. And she's like, dude, like, what?
Out of hand? They tortured me.
He's like, hey, you lied to me, okay? You did lie. That is something that happened. And Caroline's like, yeah, but I lied to protect my friends and to protect you. And then Tyler's like, look, I am genuinely sorry. And she's like, nope, it is too late for that, because you literally stood there and did nothing when they were about to kill us. I was your friend and I tried to help you, and you were gonna let these people you just met execute me.
Yeah.
She's like, what happened tonight will never happen again. You take that back to your little werewolf pack and you get the hell out of my house.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, I love Caroline.
That drives him even further into the embrace of Brady and Jules. And they then start talking about the moonstone. They're like, Mason was here looking for something called the moonstone. And Tyler's like, yeah, I know that thing. I had it for a while. And then they reveal that there's this curse that if we lift before the vampires can lift their half of it, we will be free to transform whenever we want. If we can control the transformation, that means we don't have to transform at all if we don't want to. Then they split off into two parties. Jules takes, I think one of them is named Stevie, and the rest of them don't have names.
Yeah, he's that little mousy one with the hat who thinks he's hot shit.
Yeah.
I hated him.
They go off to try and get the moonstone from the Salvatore house where Alaric and Damon are. And then Brady and Tyler go off to get Elena, because at this point, I think Tyler reveals that he knows who Elena is, because I think the werewolves know what Catherine looks like. And then they're like, so Tyler, the doppelganger is the key to breaking the curse. Don't ask us how, but she's the key to breaking the curse. Brady and Tyler go off to the little Gilbert log cabin where Elena and Stefan are, and a fight ensues. Brady chases Elena around the house while Tyler has Stefan like injured on the floor. Stefan is like, Tyler, listen to me. I know you might think that vampires want to like beat you to breaking this curse, but the truth is, me, Damon, Caroline, we have no interest in breaking this curse. And Tyler's like, you're lying. How stupid do you think I am? And Stefan's like, no. I'm telling the truth. Breaking the curse means that Elena will die. And Tyler's like, what? And he's like, oh, they didn't tell you that. Your new friends
Your
who would
new
never lie to
friends
you didn't tell you that
omitted
Elena
that
needs to
key
die.
info.
So then Tyler shifts loyalties again, and he helps Stefan up, gets the wooden buckshot out of his heart, and Stefan kills Brady. Meanwhile, Elijah shows up and kills all the werewolves who aren't Jules, who are at Damon's house.
With ease. I love that scene.
He murders Stevie with like a punch so hard that it breaks his neck.
God, they were getting so cocky in that arc. I don't know. I was upset because I was like, I want to like the werewolves because typically in any sort of vampire werewolf tamasha, I'm all about the wolves. But these wolves were pissing me off. I was like, Elijah, clear the board.
And you know why Jules survives? Because unlike the boys, she runs away. She's like, I'm not about to fight this vampire who showed up and seems very strong. I doubt she knows who he is.
This is the thing.
But
she's the subversion of the wolf allegory because she's a woman. She's not bogged down by all this posturing bullshit. She's like, I know when I'm outclassed. I'm leaving. I want to live.
After Tyler helps Stefan save Elena, he apologizes to her. He's like, I'm so sorry, and he hugs her. And that's sweet. I think it's the last time Tyler and Elena ever speak.
Ever in the show. Yeah. Until her sleeping curse, I don't think they speak again, if I'm being honest.
It's so interesting because Tyler is one of those peripheral main characters. There will be long stretches of time where he just doesn't interact with certain people at all. For example, I don't think he says a word to Bonnie until season 3.
No. Until that shit's going down with Klaus, which we'll get to, I don't think they've ever spoken.
They don't speak.
He was saying, Tyler says to the werewolves, that, yeah, Elena, I've known her my whole life. And I'm like, are you sure about that? Tell me one thing about Elena.
Tyler offers Bonnie that strong drink in season 1, which she declines, and then they never
that's
speak
it.
again until Klaus gets to town. Similarly, his little rivalry with Jeremy that had settled into like this tentative friendship gets dropped as soon as he starts spending time with Caroline and Jeremy starts falling for Bonnie.
There's just not enough time. There's not enough time on screen to keep up any like meaningful relationship because we've got to pass them on to the next one. It's always the romantic relationships too that are taking priority over friendships, which kind of sucks. But it's a CW show, so that's the currency.
Yeah, it's a shame. What's also a shame is that Jules' friends are all dead. Yeah. So is her boyfriend, but they had that coming. With nothing else to do, Tyler decides, I'm gonna leave town and, my newly widowed mother.
You can leave her alone. She's doing fine, clearly. It's like, what?
Before he does, Matt confronts him and is like, dude, I know something's going on between you and Caroline. Like, you guys can do whatever, I don't care. But just don't freaking lie to me about it. And then Tyler's like, look, man, I swear to you, we're not involved. I will be honest. She was helping me with something that I can't get into right now, and I did fall for her. And it's sweet. He says, I don't know how anyone wouldn't because she's amazing. But the truth is, she really loves you. So you be good to her. I'ma head out. And he leaves town with Jules after Jules promises no more lies. And she's gonna go teach him about lycanthropy, I guess.
And tell him about his uncle. Maybe some stuff he didn't know. And then 5 episodes later.
And then 5 episodes later. And then 5 episodes later, he's lured back into town by Klaus's warlock, Maddox, who's like, hey, Mrs. Lockwood, tell your son you had a terrible fall. So he comes to see you in the hospital. And she's like, I haven't had a terrible fall. And then he flings her down the stairs.
Maddox, you ate that little bit. That one little bit.
By this point, everyone's learned that there's no such thing as a sun and moon curse. The real curse is on Klaus.
Yeah.
And the ingredients go beyond moonstone and doppelganger when it comes to breaking it. He also needs to sacrifice a vampire and a werewolf. Caroline sees Tyler at the hospital as he's leaving after visiting his mom. Jules was with him when he arrived, but she walks away just as Caroline and Tyler start talking. And she's like, I'm gonna wait in the car. I'm not here for this teen drama. And then Maddox and Greta show up, incapacitate them, and drag them off to another cellar. Which cellar is this? It's the tomb. They take them to the tomb.
You gotta
at
love
the Fells
it.
Church.
As long as it's not that slave cellar, I don't think I can go back right now. I think we've had enough.
Oh, it's coming up.
It's for sure coming up, but for now, let me breathe.
As the sacrifice approaches, Tyler's like, oh, why have we been captured? Like, what's going on? And Caroline's like, oh yeah, you were in the B plot this season, and then you left for 5 episodes.
You have no
Let me
idea
catch
what's
you
happening.
up. And she's like, you really shouldn't have come back to town. And Tyler's like, well, yeah, I guess. Which is funny because the conversation they were having right before was that why did you leave town, Tyler? And he's like, because I thought you hated me and I had no one else left. Things were weird with Matt because I was falling for you, but he was in love with you. And I was like, I just need to get out of here and go be a werewolf somewhere outside of all the crazy. And then suddenly it's like, well, now we're going to die. So you should have stayed away.
You goddamn idiot.
Damon comes to save Caroline. He's like, let me save my crush's bestie. Oh, hi, Tyler. Let's go, Caroline. And then Caroline's like, no, we can't leave him here.
And he's like,
he's also part of a sacrifice. He'll be killed. And then Damon is like, but if I let him go, it's the full moon. Like, he's a liability. And Tyler's like, no, it's okay. You can take me to my family's cellar, my family's slave cellar, and you can lock me up there. Matt, who at this point, you mentioned it earlier, he knows about vampires now. He shows up, locked and loaded. And it's fortunate that he does, because Maddox has just arrived to be like, Damon, where are you going with Klaus's little ingredients? You can't leave. Doing the aneurysm spell, and then he gets shot by Matt.
There you go.
So good for Matt.
Matt with the blinky.
He'll take Maddox down.
Matt, walk him down, Donovan. Let's move.
And then Tyler starts to turn. Tyler's werewolf fangs are popping out and he nips Damon. Damon is like, okay, Caroline, Matt, run away. I'm gonna run away. Let's try to stay away from these deadly fangs. Matt and Caroline go off and lock themselves in the cellar, and they have time to talk about everything. That's when he reveals that, yeah, I've been on Vervain for a while. I know you're a vampire. So does your mom, by the way, because I went and told her.
I don't know if you knew about that. I told her everything.
Unlike the rest of you, when I found out there were monsters in town, I went to a responsible adult. I went to law enforcement and I said, hey,
there is a threat in our town and bodies are dropping. You need to do something.
Yeah, once again, relegated to the B plot. That's what Caroline and Tyler deal with that night. Tyler's in wolf form, and Caroline and Matt are hiding from him. And he busts in, and Matt is forced to shoot him and wound him so that he and Caroline can get away. I think they run back to the Forbes house, and that's where they spend the rest of the night until they hear a noise at the door, and then they go and see that Tyler is like
lying naked on the porch,
curled up in his usual post-werewolf ball, and he's human again. And they let Tyler rest and heal, and while they're doing that, Matt is like, it's really complicated and I don't have time for this because I'm basically an orphan who is putting himself through high school.
Yep.
So peace and love, but I don't want to be involved with this or you.
Which, fair enough.
Caroline is understandably heartbroken because she was still gunning for Matt at this point. And when Tyler wakes up, she tells him everything. Tyler's like, yeah, you're right. Me coming back was a mistake. And she's like, no. Maybe you should never have left in the first place. By the way, Matt broke up with me. And Tyler is sweet. He's just like, I'm genuinely sorry about that. And then she's like, maybe this time instead of leaving town, you could just say, thank you, Caroline, for taking care of me, which he does. And they end the season as friends. That's the majority of the Reluctant Werewolf arc. Mm-hmm. Because then season 3 rolls into town.
Oh, yeah.
Year of the originals. There is still the whole will they, won't they thing with Tyler and Caroline. Mm-hmm. They're still in that phase of like, there's a flirtationship here, but we're not really doing anything about it.
At what point do they actually start dating?
At the end of episode 1.
Okay,
I think. She's being jealous that he's talking to other girls, and then he's like, dude, remember when I kissed you last year and made it very clear I liked you, and then you like were in love with Matt? And then you broke up with Matt, but it's like, I wasn't gonna assume anything. I thought we were just friends. So if you don't want me to see other girls, then tell me.
Just let me know.
Tell me you want me and I'm yours.
Tyler.
I'm like, look at you, Tyler. A far cry from season 1.
Very emotionally responsible. He's like, here's where I'm at. You have all the information, ball's in your court.
And Caroline goes for it. They make out and have a night of flaming passion, which will become a pattern for them, I will say. Once Caroline is established, they have more frequent sex than any couple in the show.
Horny. They're so horny, those two. It's crazy.
And I love that for them. The next morning, I don't think they've really established what they want to do yet, so Caroline is feeling a bit awkward. And she decides to sneak away, and she runs into Mrs. Lockwood at the foot of the stairs. And Mrs. Lockwood is like, girl, I know a walk of shame when I see one.
I'm familiar.
Caroline's like, I'm just gonna go. Let me just get my cute little purse, which has unfortunately been doused in vervain. She touches it, and Carol's like, aha! She vervains Caroline and she hands her over to her dad, who Carol calls not long afterwards. Caroline gets imprisoned and tortured by her dad for like a day. And then Tyler wakes up and is like, hey, Caroline's not here. That's awkward. Are there regrets? What's going on? Okay, well, goes downstairs. His mother has made him some coffee. And she's like, hi, Tyler, good to see you. Why are you not drinking your coffee? Drink your coffee. Just drink it while I watch. And Tyler drinks it and is like, ew, this tastes weird. I think the milk is off. And then Carol is like, oh, thank God.
He's not a vampire too. Good,
so
good.
Later that day, Tyler is at the Mystic Grill, because where else would you be? He drinks another coffee and he's like, ew, what is with all the coffee today? It tastes so nasty. And then Matt's like, oh, there's vervain in there. Sheriff Forbes tells me to slip some in every now and then, which I guess means even though he's removed himself from the situation, Matt is
he's still helping out.
Sheriff Forbes.
Yep. He's like, hey, you've got a good cause. I'm busy with school, but if this is a simple thing I can do on my shift, I'll do it.
Planting the seeds of Matt's destiny already. And then Tyler's like, wait, that's what vervain tastes like? And Matt's like, it's not really supposed to have a taste, but I guess your werewolf taste buds picked it up when a human wouldn't. And then Tyler's like, wait a second. And he goes home and he's like, hey, Mom, why'd you give me vervain this morning? She's like, I don't know what you're talking about, Tyler. What's vervain? And then she's like, okay, fine, I confess. I was testing to see if you'd been turned, because you know you've been spending so much time with Caroline. I'm not sure at which point, maybe you can remember, at which point does Carol even realize that Caroline is a vampire? Because she must have had suspicions in order to test it.
I cannot remember. Would Liz tell anyone? I don't know.
I don't think Liz told anyone because she and Caroline end season 2
on a good note.
terms.
Yeah. Maybe something happened in episode 1. I don't know.
Tyler's like, Mother, how dare you judge vampires as these evil creatures? Meanwhile, under your own roof, you got other Halloween monsters running around. And Carol's like, wait, what? And it's like, shame. Carol is still in season 1, episode 3. She doesn't know what's going on.
No idea.
And instead of just telling her, he like takes her to the slave cellar.
Honestly, listen, because he does say, come on down to the slave cellar. And for once, I'm happy he took her to the slave cellar. Quickest way to convince somebody of something is to just show them. No footing around, just straight to the core. He goes down, he chains himself up, she's freaking out. He's like, no, don't worry about it. Everything will be clear in a second. Starts shifting into a werewolf. Shows her the whole transformation, which assumedly only takes like maybe an hour now because this is like, 6 months down the line? And at the end of it, she's like horrified and he wakes up and he's like, now do you see? And she's like, don't worry, son. I'll take care of everything. Which, I love that. But it makes sense because she's like, blue blood mom, we can't have a scandal. My son's a werewolf. But I do like that. I like to read that as like she's also being mama bear a little bit. It's like, nobody's going to get to my son. I don't care if he's supernatural. Nobody's going to touch him.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
She's like, hey, Bill Forbes, made a whoopsie. Everything's okay. You can let Caroline go. And Bill is like, girl, this is so beyond you at this point.
No.
I'm handling my own child.
So then Tyler then goes to Liz Forbes to say what's happening because, again, nobody has informed Liz of this. And they go to the tomb where Caroline's
the other cellar. This is a different cellar because...
This is a different cellar?
Yes, because when Bill is torturing Caroline, he specifically says, your ancestors built this place to deal with vampires. And it's like, oh my lord, how many creepy cellars are in this town?
One per founding family. Everybody had their own cellars.
And you'll never see the Fells cellar because...
In fact, we covered it up. We said they're not hot shit. Hot cement in that.
But yeah, Liz and Tyler save Caroline. It's more of a Liz moment. It's more of her thing. It's really beautiful where she's showing that I accept my daughter as she is. I'm not about to let my ex-husband do his weird conversion therapy nonsense on her.
We're not gonna get into it.
He carries her home bridal style. It's so cute. And after she's spoken to her mother in the denouement, and she's like, "Oh no, my dad hates me. He hates who I am. It's so bizarre." Tyler comes to sit with her, and she breaks down crying as he comforts her. He teases her a bit about, "Oh, this all happened because you snuck out on me."
Tyler, goddammit.
She laughs at the joke.
She does. I love it. And that's what gets her to open up. I love that.
It's sweet that as she's crying about her daddy issues, she's being comforted by her love interest, who understands probably better than most people in this town.
Having a very overbearing father.
Good for you, Tyler. I think at this point their relationship is solidified. They're definitely boyfriend and girlfriend by now. And then Klaus comes back to town.
Yep. Just when you think you're enjoying something, Klaus shows up to ruin it. He shows up and he's like, hey, besties. I'm on my hybrid
I'm having
trip.
a little problem. And I realize that the Mystic Falls student body is like perfect for solving that problem. We've got a witch. We've got vampires. We have a werewolf.
Perfect.
And then we've got the doppelganger who's alive. You're supposed to be dead, but it's okay. I'm not mad yet. And he's like, so none of my hybrids are turning the way that I want them to. He force feeds Tyler his hybrid blood, snaps his neck, and then says, okay, Tyler's gonna wake up in transition. Bonnie the witch, you have a few hours to figure out how to make sure that I can turn him into a proper hybrid with no failures. If you don't, well, I'm Klaus. You can probably imagine what will happen. Even in this significant moment, Tyler isn't really the focus.
No.
He's more of a plot device.
He's the
because
device.
The focus is Stefan, who's been compelled to kill these two random students and hurt Elena if anything, doesn't go according to plan.
Bonnie, who's now scrambling.
Matt and Bonnie trying to deal with the whole ghost situation and get info from Vicky on the other side because Vicky's in communication with the witch. And then Klaus is like, I think that the only way for them to successfully turn is to complete their transition with the blood of the doppelganger. So he force feeds Tyler Elena's blood after Tyler wakes up in transition, and Tyler becomes the first successful hybrid. And there's that iconic moment where he's got the veiny vampire face mixed with the glowing werewolf eyes and the fangs bared, and it's like, that's what a hybrid should look like. And thus ends a good chapter for Tyler because, oh boy.
This part is rough, unfortunately. It's not a great time for him. It's a lot of unexpected and unwanted, well, not for him, but like unwanted subservience on the part of Tyler, unfortunately.
Yes. And a few steps back, because while Caroline, and to a lesser extent everybody else, is like, "Oh, Tyler, are you okay? Because you're undead now, and the only other hybrid we know is like our main enemy. So we don't even know what being a hybrid means. Like, are you okay?" And Tyler's like, "I'm good.
Feel great.
I feel great. The future is bright. I can't wait for senior year.
I don't have to turn anymore. I'm technically part vampire, but I can walk in the sun with no help. I feel the best I've ever felt."
And then, unfortunately, the vampirism starts to heighten his more negative qualities, and he starts to backslide a bit into douchey territory. He's like, I'm gonna compel people whenever I want for petty things. I'm gonna start being all alpha doggish again.
Yeah.
I'm even gonna spend time with Rebecca for some insane reason.
Yeah, that
as she brings me innocent people to feed on.
That was like, because it hasn't been touched on yet, but I guess through Klaus, I guess there's like a little bit of fealty to Rebecca in a strange way. I don't know.
And it becomes more a thing of Caroline being like, Tyler, I say this from a place of love. You need to watch yourself. You're part vampire now. And that means all of your aspects are going to be heightened, including the negative ones. You're starting to act a bit more like Tyler
old Tyler
from before the werewolf curse was triggered. Tyler is receptive. He's like, oh no, I don't ever want to be that guy again.
No
that
one
guy
liked that guy. I didn't like that guy.
He was a jackass. He was unworthy of you. And he tells Caroline that everything I like about myself is you. Which I'm like, well, I mean, don't say that.
It's not so healthy, but it is very sweet.
Yeah. I'm like, your character growth might have been alongside Caroline, but it wasn't because of Caroline. Don't be a Damon about it. But then, despite Tyler's best efforts, it becomes clear that the sire bond is a thing, and he now has this weird, instinctive loyalty to Klaus that even defies logic. At first, he just makes some statements that make it clear that he's not in his right mind.
Yeah, or it's like, we shouldn't be crossing Klaus. Why would you want to do that? That's not in Klaus's best interest. It's like, Tyler, what?
And they're like, Klaus's best interests? What?
What are you talking about?
And Damon's like, well, he's a lost cause. I mean, I'm not going to kill him, but I'm just saying somebody should.
God.
And then Tyler remembers that Jeremy exists because they spend time together.
Wait, I think because I know where you're going with this. The first one is that he throws that party for Klaus. He moves a party they were going to have at the school to his own house to entrap Michael. So already at that point, he's fully subservient to Klaus.
Oh, yeah.
And then after that is the Jeremy thing, because the Jeremy thing happens like just before Jeremy leaves.
Does Tyler do anything significant during that time?
No. After the wake that they throw where it jabs Caroline with vervain to get her out because Klaus has told him to make sure his little friends aren't up to something. That's about the worst thing that happens. Then we don't know this, but Klaus has told him to get close to Jeremy.
Yes.
Because now with all this original stuff's happening, now that Stefan has all these coffins, Klaus is trying to maneuver his way in. That's when Tyler remembers, as you say, that Jeremy exists and they're becoming friends again. It's also at a time where Jeremy's being weirdly rebellious and is like kind of being all shitty to Elena and Rick, so that's also what's annoying about the whole situation.
Jeremy's angsty because he cheated on his girlfriend with a ghost and then she dumped him and now he doesn't know what to do with himself anymore.
The consequences of my known actions.
I like to imagine, like, off screen, Klaus is like, hey, I need you to get close to Jeremy Gilbert and steal his vervain bracelet so he can be compelled. And Tyler's like, who?
You're gonna have to refresh my memory. I'm not quite sure who you're talking about. Elena's weird little brother. Oh, I remember him.
Oh, I forgot. One thing I did want to mention. This was pre-first successful hybrid. It is interesting to note, given the ghost arc and the nature of the other side, that Vicky never once appears in front of Tyler, nor does Jeremy ever even go ask Tyler if he's seen Vicky. He immediately goes to Matt, which is the wiser option. Matt is her brother and would be thinking about her and mourning her more. But it's just another sign that Jeremy and Vicky was always more serious than Tyler and Vicky.
Or at the very least, there was a better connection there, a more like emotionally healthy connection, so that in death, there are all good vibes that you're pulling towards, you know? But yeah, Tyler and Jeremy start hanging out, and Elena is warning Jeremy against it because Tyler's very clearly not just one of Klaus's hybrids, very clearly sired to Klaus and not in control of himself as best as they can understand. Jeremy, for whatever reason, is unfazed by this.
Yeah, he's so not taking it seriously.
And invites Tyler into their house.
It's because, like you say, he's going through his rebellious era, and they're like, please keep Tyler away, we can't trust him. And Jeremy's like, hey, Tyler, who hasn't been invited in since becoming undead, come inside my home. And Tyler's like, cool, man. And they're like, Jeremy, seriously, what did we just say?
I went back to watch that for the Jeremy episode to try and understand, like, is he being compelled in this moment? But I don't think he is, because one, I don't think you can compel someone into inviting you in. But then also, like, the flimsiness of if you can compel someone to be friends with someone and then 6 points down the dialogue chain, he chooses to invite somebody in. Is that because of the compulsion? I don't know. But that's what's established. Also, they make a point to say that he takes his vervain bracelet off. Did Tyler take it off? Why did Jeremy? Jeremy just got a call and walked outside. And
maybe Tyler vamp snatched it. I don't know. Also, in terms of the whole, you can't compel someone to invite you in. I know you can't compel someone to invite you inside if you have not yet been invited. But what was going on with Miss Gibbons when the tomb vampires were living in Pearl's little dollhouse? Because it seemed like they were controlling who she let in and who she didn't let in.
That's true, yeah. Oh, that sucks.
But Alaric and Elena, who see Tyler as much more of a threat than Jeremy does, they decide to have like just a little interrogation, and they're like, how exactly does the sire bond work? Like, what's the difference between being sired and being compelled? Tyler explains it in a way that doesn't really hold water as the series goes on, but
it doesn't even hold water in that scene, is the thing. He says, oh, I'm grateful to him because becoming a hybrid has saved me from the pain and torture of having to turn every month. So serving him is just how I show my gratitude. And they're immediately like, so if Klaus told you to walk off a bridge... And he's like, that's crazy. Klaus wouldn't tell me to do that. And they're like, but just say he did.
He's like, that wouldn't hurt me anyway. I'm a hybrid. The only way to kill me is to cut off my head or rip out my heart. And I'm like, Tyler, I don't think Klaus would want you telling people this, but okay.
One, and two, you've missed the point of the exercise.
They're like, okay, let's dumb it down for your jock brain. If Klaus told you to rip out your heart, then he's like, I don't know, I guess I'd rip out my heart then. Jeez, leave me alone.
Like, my guy, you're being mind controlled. The only difference is Klaus doesn't have to work for it. Like,
I kind of wish that they had done more of I mean, they say Stockholm Syndrome isn't real, but
we recorded that episode, Damon Part 2, just in the week where we were finding out actually Stockholm Syndrome isn't real. And I was so pissed off because we mentioned it so much.
oh well, now it's a dated reference.
Yeah.
But I wish it had been more of like a manual brainwashing type thing rather than a magical mind control thing, just so that there was a difference between compulsion and the sire bond, leaving aside all the stuff that happens with Damon and Elena later on.
Yeah.
But for the sake of Tyler, because it would have been interesting, I think, to see Klaus become this new male figure that Tyler has been duped into looking up to. He is the original hybrid. Tyler is the first unoriginal hybrid. Maybe Klaus could be like sinking his claws in and indoctrinating Tyler. Maybe like a, we are the superior species type thing.
Yeah, now that you're a
advantage
hybrid. Us 12 of us, or however many hybrids Klaus has at that point, we're the only ones that exist in the entire world. We are special in this sense. And you're one of us now.
Yeah.
Absolutely something he'd get fallen into.
And it's a shame that Klaus's relationship with Tyler is never any deeper than, you're my first progeny, and there's some fondness there, but it's more like me being proud of my handiwork. And Tyler being like, yes, master. Because it's like, there are similarities between the two of them. Of course, both coming from werewolf bloodlines, but both having deeply rooted daddy issues.
Yeah.
Both being victims of, toxic masculinity and this very boorish upbringing where it's like, might is right, and how Klaus is the epitome of someone who was raised by this awful father who taught him that being powerful means you can do whatever you want. And Tyler being someone who had sort of gone away from that, but maybe he was being drawn back in by Klaus.
I think if you ask Klaus, he would think they had a relationship that was like somewhat close. I think Klaus would become, because Klaus would put in the minimal effort that he thinks is sufficient for someone to now be loyal to him for the rest of his life. Because in the moments when Tyler does manage to break away, Klaus is baffled. Klaus is like, excuse me, you're my hybrid. Klaus is floored by it. Because he thinks
Klaus is like, you
unbreakable. Me. Klaus is spanking Olivia Rodrigo when it's like, Klaus, what do you actually know about Tyler now that we're there? How much he's your first child, and you're just, I don't think you could tell me anything about what he likes and doesn't like.
Klaus is like, I know Tyler. He's a Lockwood, and he's dating the girl I like. There, 2 facts. Keep the change.
Oh, Lord. But, like, I can't remember, because it's not in this season, right, where... Oh, it is in the season where he speaks to Bill Forbes, because this is the only season Bill Forbes is in.
It's after Klaus is like, let me test how deep this sire bond goes. Hey, Tyler, go give your girlfriend a lethal werewolf venom bite for no reason. And Tyler's like, what? No, dude, I'm not going to do that. Like, hell no. And then he's just physically compelled to. And it's like, what is the difference? What is the difference between this and compulsion? This is the same as when Sarah was acting chill the whole night until Matt failed to get Tyler to kill him. And then she was like, okay, guess it's my time now. I've been activated.
It's interesting, too, because it's like, I think Tyler had started to refuse some of Klaus's requests because the whole situation with Jeremy had pushed him. Because he was like, well, how much free will do I actually have in this situation? And Klaus is like, what is free will anyway? Like, what does that mean? You're my hybrid. You work for me, so you do what I say. I don't know why you'd want to think beyond that. And Tyler's like, I'm not going to hurt my friends for you. And then he does it. And it's like, well, damn. Turns out you don't have any free will in this.
If they had had more time to spend on Tyler as a character, because I understand the show is packed at this point. It's Klaus, it's Rebecca, it's Elena and her boy toys, it's Caroline, it's Jeremy, Matt is there, it's Bonnie and Alaric and various guest characters just coming in and out. Maybe they could have had some sort of a plot for Tyler where he unravels, and that does lead to him genuinely seeing Klaus as someone worth following. A show that does it really well with a character who had really been on the side of the protagonist up until then is Buffy in the 3rd season.
Spoilers for Buffy season 3 for anyone who hasn't seen it.
When Faith just begins to feel more and more alienated, and then she is ripe for the picking when the mayor decides, hey, I want a Slayer on my side.
Yeah. Faith, man, I have a lot to say on Faith, but that's for another day. In a way, the thing you're describing, it is what we're talking about now, where he realizes being with Klaus is a net negative. It's a ruin on his life. He's losing his friends, he's losing his girlfriend. He nearly killed his girlfriend. And then Klaus then uses that as an opportunity to try and mac on his girlfriend when he shows up with his blood. It's like, you caused the problem, my guy.
Wild.
You can't show up like the White Knight when you're the one who's killing her. So he does have that moment where it's like, I'm gonna, within my power, I want to try and stop this thing. And that's when he goes to Bill Forbes to try and break the sire bond. Because Bill Forbes, as we've said many a time, friend of the pod, master of mental power, master of cognitive control. If anybody's gonna know how to break it, it's him. Because he can't be compelled. Even in this season, the show draws the parallel between compulsion and the sire bond. So it's honestly insane that later onwards it's suggested that there's a difference, that they're markedly different.
That's when Bill is like, the mechanics of this sire bond are that you feel loyalty to Klaus for setting you free from the pain of turning once a month. So you're going to turn over and over again until you either get accustomed to the pain or it's not as painful. They treat it like those two things are synonymous, and I'm like, that's not the same thing.
It's
like,
very different.
Is it still going to be painful, or is your pain threshold just going to increase?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's just like, once you feel a particular pain enough times, you just get used to it. And it's just like, it'll be nothing to you. You do it like it's nothing. And he leaves for a bit, as he tends to. Markedly, Tyler leaves the most often in this show. He goes to go sort that out.
But you know what? He's better off for it, because sometimes the show does not know what to do with Jeremy and Matt, and it really shows.
He leaves, he comes back, far better off for it, but then they're like, Klaus doesn't know that you have this now. We can use this as a weapon.
While he's gone, because he leaves, he doesn't leave with Bill, right?
No, because Bill dies. So I guess Tyler just goes off by himself to go figure it out.
Yeah, because he sends Caroline a letter after her father has died, and he's like, I'm really sorry to hear about your dad. I just want you to know that I'm doing what he told me to. I'm gonna try and break the sire bond so that I can come back to you.
And I'm gonna make
and I'm like,
her back to you.
She's your anchor now.
Yes.
Not just like romantically, but also in the story, because without her, you have nothing to do.
But also your werewolf anchor, which is a concept in Teen Wolf and not in Vampire Diaries. But like the person you think
she's
of,
his Allison.
she's his Allison.
Love that for them. So eventually he does come back. As you say, he's then their secret weapon, because he's like, ooh, Klaus doesn't know. And boy, does Klaus come with his toxic alpha male energy, and he's like, I can flirt with Caroline all I want because Tyler is my stooge and will just sit back and let me do it. And Tyler's like gritting his teeth and being like, yes, sir, that's true.
This is the thing about it, that I wasn't going to bring it up now because it's more relevant in a later season. But the sire bond, it's odd to me that the sire bond at the end of the day is a vampire thing, because it very much feels like a werewolf thing. Because Klaus makes all these hybrids and forms this pack around him where he is the alpha. And they are subservient to him as the alpha of the pack. Even that demonstration of like, I'll do what I want and there's nothing you can say because I am your alpha. And so it's odd to me that it's a vampire thing, the sire bond. I guess you could argue, as they say, this is just the way it expresses themselves in hybrids, but hybrids haven't existed prior to this, so it's just odd that this thing makes more sense with these wolf characters than it does with vampires down the line. And it works better for the wolves.
For what it's worth, it seems that all hybrids are sired to their maker, save for one.
Save for one.
Which we won't spoil.
Right. But the sire bond happens
every other one.
every time. Yeah. It's so odd that like that's the odd outlier that's never existed before, as opposed to the vampire sire bond that is super rare. Very strange retroactive writing thing.
Maybe it's because of the werewolf pack mentality, which does become we'll put a pin in that. It becomes relevant one season later. For the rest of that season, Tyler's just basically running around pretending to be loyal to Klaus while actively working against him. When the originals breeze through town, like all the siblings and Mother Esther, he doesn't really do much. He's there to say goodbye to Alaric when Alaric's like, I'm gonna let myself die and not complete the transition.
He looks really good in his outfit at that dance. I don't know what it is about it. A trilby very rarely looks good on a man, but I feel like he has the head shape for it.
Oh yes. Oh, he does. He does. He looks good as a 20s man.
Yeah, I'm sure I said something nasty about it in prior episodes because I just instinctively hate that hat, but he does look good in that hat.
I like it. And I like that Candace Akala in heels is taller than Michael Trevino.
Yes, of course. We love to see it.
It's barely noticeable, but I'm like, yay, short king.
Short king!
The most significant thing surrounding Tyler towards the end of season 3 is when they learn about the sire lines and how if you kill an original, everything turned in their sire line will die as well. And there's that moment where they're like, oh, okay, we're gonna kill all the originals except the one who we're descended from. And we hope it's not Klaus, because we really need to get rid of Klaus. And then Caroline's like, oh, snap, light bulb moment. Klaus turned Tyler personally. So if we kill Klaus, Tyler will definitely die, no matter who we're descended from. And then it becomes this like obstacle in the road where they're like, okay, we need to get rid of Klaus. And the easiest way to do that, we can't even risk it because Tyler will die. And Tyler is noble enough to, when Caroline tells him this, he's like, I'm prepared to die for the sake of the rest of you. And Caroline is like, no way are we letting that happen. And Damon's like, please, let's just let it happen.
When is the moment when, because as usual, Klaus is ready to leave town. I guess it's after they've killed Finn and after he's forced Bonnie to unlink them. Oh, and it must also be after the Killaric situation.
It's all the way when Vampire has been created.
Yeah.
And Klaus is like, well, he's too strong to kill.
I'm out. And of course, I'm taking my hybrids with me and I'm taking my doppelganger with me, so...
Tyler's like, I'm gonna help Elena get away. And Klaus catches him freeing Elena. And Klaus is like, so much for that sire bond. And he looks so devastated. And I'm like, Klaus, you're that person who someone is just like friendly to you and you think they have a crush on you.
Yeah.
And then when you see them with someone else, you're like, oh, okay, well, screw you too.
Sabrina Beer. Oh, all right. Well, I guess you're an awful bitch. It's like, have you put anything into this relationship? What have you contributed?
This is the same Klaus who was convinced his relationship with Stefan was deeper than the literal romance Stefan had with Rebecca. And it's like, Klaus, it wasn't about you.
It really, I mean, you guys were like buds for sure, but I don't know why it needs to be a her or me situation. With your own sister, Klaus, there is... We have to get into it at another juncture, but we need to explore how Klaus's abandonment issues overlap with like the homoerotic tendencies, but that's not important right now.
Boy, do they. And it's funny because comparing him to Tyler, I almost sensed something similar in Tyler when he and Jeremy had that like budding friendship that completely falls away.
Yeah.
Oh, they were in love with the same girl, but after all the toxic displays of like masculinity, and it's like, oh, we're fighting over the same girl, we're constantly trading blows over this woman who really we should just leave to make her choice because she's a human being with a brain. It's like, oh, now we're bonding over art and this this cultured thing, and we both draw, and I thought you were just a boring emo, and I thought you were just a dumb jock.
Asshole jock.
Look, we have something in common.
How about we get a drink, or I don't know, play pool at the grill, just hang out as bros, nothing more. Why would there be anything more? I don't know.
The gods of heterosexuality sensed my happiness, and they were like, nope.
Tomcat always ruining the game for all of us. But yes, Klaus does say so much for that Cyberbond, and Tyler says the iconic line, I'm not your little bitch anymore. It's my favorite line of his. It's my favorite delivery. His face with all the attitude. It's so good. And it's like, Tyler, are you about to take on Klaus? What's the plan here, buddy?
And then the Salvatore brothers show up through their combined strength and Tyler's.
Through Bonnie somewhere in the woods.
Bonnie in the woods with Jeremy. They managed to stop Klaus's heart and desiccate him. And it's like, oh wow, Klaus has been beaten. That's the season up in a nice bow. Vampaloric notwithstanding. And then Vampaloric not only continues to be a threat, but he shows up to the Founders Council and is like, you know how you've been letting Damon and Liz and Carol basically spearhead this whole thing?
Yeah.
Well, Damon Salvatore is a vampire.
First of all.
Sheriff Forbes' daughter is a vampire.
Number 2.
And Mayor Lockwood 2.0, her son is a half vampire, half werewolf.
3 for 3.
It's disgusting.
Y'all have let this council go to shit. So Vampire is after Rebecca and Klaus now because he wants to finish the job.
The Mystic Falls gang has hidden Klaus's desiccated body away. They're gonna deliver it to Elijah. Once they realize Vampire is running about, they're like, okay, we need to move Klaus somewhere safe because not that we care about him, but if he goes down, apparently we all go down. And Tyler definitely goes down. Bonnie, who's entering her own rebellious era at that point, Bonnie's like, I've been dabbling in some dark magics. At one point, she comes across Klaus's desiccated but still conscious body.
His eyes are wide open.
And for a moment, I wondered if she was gonna default to like late season 1, early season 2 Bonnie, who's just like, no vampires allowed. But she's like, she says to Klaus, I should let you burn. And I'm like, wait, Bonnie, no. But then she's like, but if you die, all my friends die, and my mom dies. So what she does is she magically jumps Klaus's spirit into Tyler's body. I don't think she asked permission.
No, I doubt it. I don't think for a second Tyler would have let that happen. I thought he'd be like, well, I guess if he believed that it would kill his friends too for Klaus to die, then maybe he would do the self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
But I don't think Bonnie asked.
For some reason, Klaus's spirit not being in his body when it's staked is enough to not let his sireline die or his body burn up. Whatever magical nonsense that entails.
Right.
But that's where season 3 ends, with Klaus inside Tyler's body, so to speak. Cool, that's a good place to book it. We have seen 3 of the 4 stages of Tyler at this point. We've seen the jerk jock, we've seen the reluctant werewolf, and we've seen the first successful hybrid, which is actually a quote from Tyler. When he's being a bit mind-slavey in the beginning and Caroline can't figure out why he's acting this way, he says, Caroline, I'm his first successful hybrid. Don't you think that's the least bit cool?
Don't you think, like, this is the best thing that's ever happened? And maybe I should actually be thanking him, you know? Like, I think you're not seeing the whole angle of this. Oh, Tyler. I think when we come back in the next session, we'll be in possibly my favorite life stage of Tyler Lockwood.
His peak, if you will.
Certainly. Yeah, I guess that's it on Tyler for now. Thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts, questions, or you just want to say hi, I don't know, you can mail us at animalattackpod@gmail.com. You can also tweet us at animattackpod. That's at ANIM attack pod. There is a link tree in the bio that has all of our online stuff, our personal Twitters, the YouTube channel, the TikTok, everything. It's all there. Go in, have some fun, and share it with your friends. Listen, it's a new year. We're back in business. We're doing it for the long haul. For 2024, I think it would be nice if this podcast can just like spread its wings a little bit. We've already got a couple people like coming in, some new people. I was checking the numbers. I was like, okay, I'm liking it. But I want to see this thing go far. I want this to be like
our first metamorphosis.
Yeah, I want us to enter our second werewolf era. Stage. We were in our first, like, May 2023. We started our pupation, and now I want us to be in a metamorphic cocoon, a chrysalis, and emerge the powerful butterfly. This is fully insane. We have to go. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening, guys.
We'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
Bye.